Chapter 76 Luke glanced at Taka before turning his attention to the person accompanying him. He felt an intense aura coming from the elderly man. He looked back at Raymond, his expression serious. Raymond nodded, indicating that he recognized the significance of the situation. It was evident that the old man Taka had brought with him was not someone to be taken lightly, and they needed to proceed cautiously. Luke discreetly signaled to their men as they all tensed up, ready for a potential confrontation. The air grew heavy with anticipation. The old man could see through all this as he could feel the atmosphere slowly tense. Meanwhile, an oblivious Taka, unaware of the brewing tension, suddenly erupted in anger. Pointing an accusing finger at Raymond, he shouted, "You thief! Give me back my money!" But instead of facing Raymond head-on, Taka stood behind the old man as he kept himself safe by seeking protection from the old man as he threw the accusations. The scene left everyone speechless, with all eyes fixed on the peculiar display. Ahem. Taka cleared his throat, feeling a bit embarrassed by his outburst. He stepped forward, positioning himself beside the old man, and extended his hand toward Raymond. "Hand it over," he demanded, his voice more subdued this time. The old man shook his head, his gaze fixed on Raymond. Though he remained silent, an unspoken tension seemed to radiate from him. This caused everyone to shift their position, preparing for a potential conflict subtly. "There's no need to be so tense," Raymond remarked, shaking his head with a chuckle, though the old man's frown remained unchanged. "Young man, I'm too old for this nonsense. Why don't you give it back?" The old man grumbled. Ignoring the old man's grumble, Raymond turned to Taka, explaining, "He stole my stuff first. I simply gave him a taste of his own medicine." Exclamation mark. Taka visibly flinched at Raymond's words while the old man's frown deepened. He sharply turned his gaze to Taka, who immediately looked away as the kid felt awkward. "Explain. You didn't tell me about this," the old man demanded. Taka tried to evade the question, but the old man's piercing stare made him sweat nervously. With an awkward scratch of his head, he reluctantly confessed the truth. The old man's deep frown persisted as he processed the story, laying the blame squarely on Taka. "It's all right. I don't need his money," Raymond said, his tone calm yet firm. "But still." He stepped forward, extending his hand for a handshake. "I'm Raymond. Just moved here today." The old man hesitated before accepting the handshake. Their grip was firm as they exchanged introductions. "Sakujiro, I'm just a baker." Raymond chuckled at this. "Just a baker, huh? I'd definitely love to try your stuff sometime." Turning his attention to Taka, who avoided eye contact, Raymond noticed the sudden shift in demeanor. However, it was Sakujiro who intrigued him the most. His hands didn't feel like those of a baker. They bore the roughness of someone accustomed to higher intensity of physical labor. Meeting Sakujiro's gaze, Raymond sensed a hidden fire behind the otherwise deadpan expression. "A baker, huh? Is he telling the truth, or is he messing with me?" Raymond mused silently. Sakujiro's stern voice interrupted his thoughts, "But still what? Why don't you complete your sentence, young man?" Raymond glanced at Taka, who looked at him with a mix of hope and fear. He chuckled at the sight. Taka seemed genuinely worried that Raymond wouldn't return his belongings. Without missing a beat, Taka retrieved Raymond's pouch and hastily handed it over. "Here, your chopstick. I'll give it back to you, Aniki. Please give me back my money," he pleaded anxiously. "Chopstick?" Luke and the others exchanged puzzled glances. "You actually brought a chopstick with you? Out of everything that might be useful for us here, you brought a chopstick?" Luke spoke up, voicing their confusion. Sakujiro's expression mirrored Luke's disbelief as he regarded Raymond with a perplexed look. Raymond's frown deepened. "Just a chopstick?" he repeated, shaking his head, it's not just a chopstick, it's my chopstick. Everyone fell into silence, their expressions a mix of confusion and disbelief, especially Sakujiro, who now saw Raymond as if he were looking at a mentally ill person. Well, technically, it's not just a chopstick. Raymond shrugged, his tone casual as he swiftly retrieved the pouch from Taka's grasp. The suddenness of his action left Taka wide-eyed and unable to react as he protested, "Hey! Give me back my pouch first." "Just hold on a second, kid," Raymond replied, shaking his head. With deliberate movements, he opened his chopstick container, revealing a hidden compartment within. Taka's eyes widened in surprise at the unexpected discovery. The container had a container? He muttered, clearly astonished by the revelation. As Raymond unveiled the contents of the container, a hush fell over the group as they gathered around him. Inside was a fine white powder that caught everyone's attention. Luke was dumbfounded as he turned to Raymond with disbelief. "Are you pulling my legs?" "What's that?" Taka piped up, his curiosity piqued. Sakujiro remained silent but fixed his gaze on Raymond, clearly intrigued by the revelation. Raymond grinned proudly as he explained, "This is the king of flavor. It's a miraculous white powder that can transform any shitty food into a masterpiece. MSG." As Raymond spoke, a mixture of surprise and admiration swept through the group. Luke couldn't help but palm his face in disbelief, while the others seemed impressed by the mysterious powder. Luke couldn't help but wonder why Raymond suddenly became fixated on food after his time in the slums. He shook his head, pondering what might have influenced this change in him. "All right, that's enough," Raymond announced, replacing the container and returning his chopstick to its holder. He then retrieved Taka's pouch, catching the young boy's eager gaze. "I'll give this back to you, but..." Raymond hesitated, glancing between Taka and Sakujiro. "But what?" Sakujiro interrupted, his brow furrowing in concern. Taka mirrored the sentiment, his expression growing more anxious. "I returned yours, so you should return mine. You stole my stuff first, so consider this a way to make amends." Raymond shook his head, signaling for Taka to listen. Taka scratched his head, feeling annoyed. He thought about protesting but couldn't shake the thought of Sin's well-being as he said, "Fine. As long as I'm not losing any body parts." Raymond grinned mischievously, "Actually, I need your whole body." "Excuse me?" Sakujiro's stern voice cut through the tension. Raymond remained unfazed. "Relax, old man. I just want him to work for me." "What kind of work?" Taka chimed in, looking puzzled. "I need you to work as a waitress at my restaurant," Raymond replied with a bright smile. "Restaurant?" Sakujiro and Taka exchanged confused glances. Raymond gestured grandly to the dilapidated building behind him as he opened up his arms wide. "This will be my restaurant." As if on cue, a pillar in the building gave a groan and collapsed with a loud thud. Sakujiro and Taka exchanged skeptical looks, totally unconvinced. Chapter 77 After convincing them that the restaurant would be ready soon, Sakujiro and Taka were about to leave after Raymond tossed Taka's pouch to him. Still, after getting his hand on his pouch, the kid furiously opened it and counted his coins immediately. Sakujiro watched the scene in silence, his expression unreadable. Raymond chuckled lightly, then turned to Sakujiro with a serious tone. "Old man, have you ever been through a war?" Raymond's question hung in the air, and Sakujiro's silence confirmed his suspicions. Raymond could see the signs in Sakujiro's weathered hands and the way he carried himself with quiet strength. It was clear that Sakujiro had seen his fair share of battles. The lines etched on Sakujiro's face hinted at the weight of past regrets, fears, and frustrations. Yet, amidst it all, there was a glimmer of something else, a longing. "Phew. Looks like you're off the hook," Taka interjected before Sakujiro could respond. Raymond chuckled at Taka's sudden change in tone, finding it amusing how quickly the kid spoke as if he had forgiven him despite his earlier anxiety. Sakujiro shook his head in amusement at Taka's antics, then turned his back as the boy dashed off. "Hurry up, Grandpa. I want to buy some bread from your stall." "I'm not that old yet, you little rascal," Sakujiro muttered to himself with a frown, shaking his head at Taka's impatience. Luke chuckled at the kid as he shouted, "Don't forget that you're our employee now." "Ha! Like you'll ever actually build a restaurant." Taka responded with a middle finger. Luke laughed heartily, finding the boy's audacity amusing. That kid sure has some spirit. Meanwhile, Sakujiro quietly made his way off, drawing the attention of the others. They watched him leave in silence. "War, huh?" Sakujiro mumbled to himself, his voice heavy with memories. He shook his head, his expression pained. "I've never been through a war. Those were not wars at all." His words trailed off as he turned away, his footsteps echoing softly against the ground. The weight of his past seemed to hang heavily upon him. With a clenched fist and a distant look in his eyes, Sakujiro muttered under his breath, "Those were just senseless massacres." Meanwhile, deep within a thick forest bustling with greenery, a group of people huddled together. "So, the traces led to this place, Shanark?" asked the group's leader, a man in a black suit with a tattoo on his forehead and peculiar orb-shaped earrings. Shanark, distinguished by his blonde hair and bright green eyes, wore a lavender outfit. He looked at his handheld electronic devices before responding, "I can't say for certain. If we had her stuff here, I could confirm it." On the sidelines, the burliest member of the group, sporting an impressive afro, abruptly rose to his feet, his fist clenched tightly. "Then let's take these guys out." "Yuvagin, chill out," a shorter man clad in dark, loose-fitting attire, a skull-crested bandana covering his mouth, urged Yuvagin to calm himself. "Ha! Phaeton, itching for a brawl, huh? How am I supposed to calm down?" Yuvagin shot back, his own gaze burning with fury. "I said, calm the fuck down, or they might slip away, damn it." Phaeton countered, his eyes ablaze with intense bloodlust. A young woman with disheveled pink hair and a petite build shook her head, paying little heed to the quarreling group. She turned to the man in the black suit and inquired, "What to do now?" "Krilo?" Krilo was deep in thought before he rose from his seat and addressed her, "Maki, could you fetch some of her belongings from the old man? He'll likely comply if it's you asking." "All right, but I can't promise since the old man is a stubborn one," Maki replied with a nod. "Hold on, are we seriously heading back already? Seems like a waste after coming all this way." A man clad in a traditional Japanese robe and shorts piped up, scratching his head and gesturing toward Krilo. "I'm with Nobunaga on this one. Turning back now feels like a stretch." Another burly figure spoke up, his face marred by numerous scars and his mouth crudely sewn shut. "Dumbass," Maki muttered under her breath, causing Nobunaga to turn sharply towards her with his voice rising, "What did you just say?" Maki ignored Nobunaga, which provoked Nobunaga further as he clenched his fists, ready to confront her. "Hey, ease up, Nobunaga," Franklin intervened, trying to defuse the situation. "Seriously? You're not backing me up, Franklin?" Nobunaga shot back, ready to throw a hand at Franklin as well. "Come on, Krilo, let's just do it now. Since when do we need to care about whether they truly did it or not?" Yuvagin interrupted, voicing his impatience, a sentiment shared by the rest of the group. "It's..." Before Krilo could respond, the sound of approaching footsteps caught their attention. They turned to see two individuals approaching. "Huh? Outsiders." The eyes of the newcomers glowed scarlet, their sudden hostility evident. Krilo's gaze hardened at the sight. "Hey, who the hell are you? Get out of this place." One of them spoke with hostility as they slowly approached the group. "Freaking dead meat. Phaeton cursed and prepared himself to attack. But before he could, someone else acted! Exclamation mark. The group watched in surprise as the sound of a sharp wind filled the air. Two heads suddenly went flying, landing with a thud, revealing Crello standing behind them. Though these two seemed intent on driving them out, Crello sensed intense bloodlust from them. It made him suspect they might be involved in the incident. He wore a cold expression as he held a knife, turning to the group. "It's important for me to know if the Courtois clan was responsible." "Why should we care?" Uvogin grumbled once again. Crello's response was firm, "Because I can't let them die a simple death like this if it was them who did it." Maki's eyes trembled slightly, understanding Crello's sentiment. The rest of the group grasped the situation. Considering her importance to Crello, it was only right that he would be the most enraged among them. "Maki will go back on her own, as she always did," Crello continued. He then turned to the direction where the two people had come from. "We'll be waiting around here." His eyes turned icy, and the atmosphere grew tense as he muttered to himself, "We reject no one, so take nothing from us." Chapter 78 So, how are we going to build the restaurant? Luke asked Raymond after their guests had left. "We'll do it ourselves," Raymond replied matter-of-factly. "Huh?" Luke looked puzzled by the response. Ignoring Luke's confusion, Raymond turned to Jake and Logan. "There's a forest nearby. Go chop some wood and bring it here." "But that's a few kilometers away," Jake stammered, voicing the concern shared by Logan. Raymond remained resolute. "Bring as much as you can. If it's not enough, go back and get more." "That's going to be exhausting." Luke chuckled and shook his head, but his amusement quickly faded when Raymond turned to him and Aideen with a small smile on his face. "I need you and Aideen to gather as many mint leaves as possible. We need them to fill up the walls." Luke fell silent, realizing there was no room for argument. He sighed and questioned, "Why do we need mint leaves? You think we can clear all this trash in a day?" Raymond gestured towards the massive pile surrounding the run-down building as everyone shook their heads. "It's impossible." "That's why I need the mint leaves," Raymond continued. "We'll use them to cover up and neutralize the smell." "I suppose that makes sense," Luke scratched his head, considering the idea to be viable. Luke narrowed his eyes at Raymond. "What about you? We're the ones doing all the hard work here." "Don't worry about that, I'll be joining you in the forest," Raymond replied firmly. "I need to find some large leaves to use as our rooftop." There were collective sighs from everyone. "Can't we do it tomorrow?" Luke grumbled. "You think you can sleep with those disgusting smells around?" Raymond retorted, shaking his head at Luke's suggestion. "I guess you're right." As the pungent odor assaulted their senses, everyone wrinkled their noses, realizing they might suffocate to death if they didn't find a way to rid themselves of the stench. With no other choice, they resigned themselves to following Raymond's plan. Little did they know, Raymond had no intention of allowing them to rest anytime soon. In addition to gathering materials, they would also have to build the restaurant. A smirk crept across Raymond's face as he thought of this. Meanwhile, not far from them, a disheveled man that looked like a beggar furrowed his brows in concern after seeing Raymond's interaction with Sakujiro. Did that old man really go meet those new folks? He then left his spot as he navigated through the streets of the city, his eyes fixed on his destination as he ventured deeper. Eventually, he arrived at a building that stood out among the dilapidated surroundings. Though not fancy, it had a solid presence, its sturdy structure contrasting sharply with the debris-filled streets. The building, while not fancy, had a certain dignity that set it apart from the rest. Its walls, though worn, stood tall and strong against the elements. Despite the neglect evident in the city's other structures, this building maintained a sense of order and stability. As he stepped inside, the beggar-like man found himself amidst a bustling scene. Laughter and conversation filled the air, but it all fell silent as every eye turned to him. Approaching him was a serious-looking man who seemed to be in charge. He wore a dark loose kimono with his hair tied to his back like a samurai. "You don't often come here. What's your business today?" "I need to see our boss," the beggar-like man replied firmly. "I see, follow me." The man nodded and gestured for him to follow. They made their way through the lively crowd, disappearing into the depths of the building. Arriving at a specific room, they paused outside the door, and the man knocked. "Come in," boomed a deep voice, sending shivers down their spines. The man opened the door, ushering them inside. In the room sat an elderly man with a bald head and some hair tied at the back. He wore a dark red robe and held a long sword in his hand, handling it with precision. He was one of the influential powers in the Meteor City, besides the city's elders. His name was Watanabe. "Apologies for the interruption," the man said, but Watanabe silenced him with a gesture, setting aside his sword to focus on his subordinates. Watanabe then suddenly spoke to the man, "Sajin, ensure the next batch is ready within 2 months." Sajin's eyes widened in surprise, prompting him to inquire, "Is there a specific reason for this sudden change?" "I don't know, and I don't care. They're paying double, and that's all that matters," Watanabe replied with a dismissive shake of his head. Despite his influence, Watanabe was constrained by the rule against harming Meteor City residents, enforced by the elders. However, he found ways around this restriction by outsourcing the tasks to outsiders, who were willing to pay a hefty price for his services. All he needed to do was to close his eyes when it happened. "I'll have the list ready soon." "Do they have any specific requests this time?" Sajin inquired. "They won't be concerned with the specifics, as long as the organs are viable," Watanabe remarked, shaking his head. Typically, they provided the outsiders with a list detailing the individuals, their basic descriptions, and where they could be located. This streamlined the process for the outsiders to retrieve the desired items. Their primary client was always the Ten Dons, the dominant mafia group in the continent. The only requirement from the Ten Dons was that the goods had to be in usable condition. Watanabe folded his arms, fixing his gaze on the beggar-like man. "And?" The beggar-like man bowed nervously, his voice trembling. "It's that old man, Sakujiro. He left his hideout to meet with some newcomers. It seemed like they were making deals or something." A frown creased Watanabe's brow. Sakujiro had always kept a low profile in his rundown dwelling ever since Watanabe had decimated his entire crew. Following the loss of his granddaughter, Sakujiro had become a recluse, rarely venturing outside. Sajin was aware of the situation as he frowned. "Should we eliminate him?" "We can't touch him. He's under the elders' protection." Watanabe dismissed the idea immediately. He couldn't go against the elders, at least, not yet. However, being cautious wouldn't hurt as he ordered, "Keep an eye on those newcomers. Report any unusual activity to me." "Got it, boss." Sajin acknowledged before departing. Left alone, Watanabe resumed tending to his sword, his mind preoccupied with thoughts of the beggar-like man's report as he shook his head. Even if the worst happened, what can he do with these people? "I can just kill them all later." Chapter 79-. In a lush forest, there sat a simple village with small wooden homes nestled among the trees. Pyro! Pyro! Amidst the tranquility, a child's joyful shout rang out, drawing attention to one of the modest houses. A 12-year-old boy, his hair a bright shade of blonde, dashed excitedly toward the dwelling. Nearby, another boy of the same age watched the scene unfold with calmness. With short brown hair and deep maroon eyes, he wore a simple tabard, its colors matching the hues of the forest around them. "Kurapika, take it easy. If you keep making so much noise, your mother will give you an earful." Pyro gently shook his head, attempting to soothe his friend's excitement. Judging by your reaction, I guess you passed the test," right? Pyro speculated, prompting Kurapika to widen his eyes in surprise. Really? You're no fun, Pyro. But yes. Kurapika exclaimed, raising both hands in excitement, this means I just have to pass the final trial, and then I can start searching for a doctor to help you. Pyro was Kurapika's closest childhood friend, his constant companion through thick and thin. Following a tragic accident where he fell from a cliff while trying to save Kurapika, Pyro had been left with weak legs and his eyesight steadily deteriorating. Haunted by guilt over the accident, Kurapika harbored an unwavering determination to seek medical treatment beyond their secluded village. To achieve this, he had to undergo a series of tests set by their clan, the only pathway to gaining permission to leave their community and venture into the outside world. Pyro's eyes, clouded with his visual impairment, trembled slightly as he gazed at the enthusiastic Kurapika. Despite his condition, Pyro never resented his decision to save Kurapika, his closest friend and brother figure. He would make the same choice 1,000 times over if given the chance. Yet, the possibility of finding a cure stirred a glimmer of hope within him. Though he didn't want to burden Kurapika, the prospect of healing his condition was too enticing to ignore. And as I search for a cure for you, I'll explore the world and find out if the ocean is really as salty as they say in the books. Kurapika's innocent smile lit up his face as he shared his plans with Pyro. Pyro's smile widened as he listened, his eyes reflecting a sense of warmth. Then you must pass tomorrow's final exam without fail. Absolutely. Kurapika's nod was resolute as they continued their conversation, his laughter filling the air as he excitedly discussed his dreams of adventure and exploration. The next day, Kurapika stood before the clan elders. At the center stood a respected elder dressed in a green robe with gold trim. His gray hair and beard added to his venerable appearance as he looked down at Kurapika. You're going to leave the forest for your final test. Are you sure you want to continue? The elder asked, his voice carrying weight. Yes, elder. I'm ready to go on, Kurapika replied firmly, his voice tinged with excitement. The elder of the Korta clan grunted, recognizing Kurapika's determination, much like his mother's. Give him what he needs for the test. He motioned for one of their clansmen to approach. The clansman stepped forward, carrying a brown cloth with a rope tied on top, resembling a pouch. This is your grocery bag, he explained. Use it to gather all the items on this list. He handed Kurapika the list and a handful of paper bills. Thank you, uncle. Kurapika accepted them with a nod of gratitude. The clansman shook his head before retreating to stand by the elder's side. The elder adjusted his beard as he spoke further. Your final test involves going to the nearest town located to the north of the forest. You must complete this task without getting agitated, regardless of what happens in the town. ? Kurapika looked puzzled at the instruction, but the elder didn't elaborate further, instead gesturing for something. Pyro. With the signal, Pyro slowly approached them, his weak legs causing him to move cautiously. I'll help you over. Kurapika hurried to his side, offering support as they prepared to embark on their journey. Thank you, Kurapika, Pyro smiled gratefully. Kurapika shrugged off the thanks, his gaze fixed on the vial of eye drops, causing him to swallow nervously. He knew exactly what it was. It seems you're familiar with this, the elder remarked as he took the vial from Pyro's hand. The vial contained eye drops designed to reveal the scarlet eyes of their clan members, even after they had calmed down from activating their eyes. It was a crucial tool to determine whether Kurapika had passed or failed the test. Then I won't have to explain further. Look up, the elder ordered. Kurapika obeyed, tilting his head back as instructed. The elder carefully opened the vial and administered drops to each of Kurapika's eyes. As the drops fell, Kurapika felt a soothing sensation wash over him. It was as if pure water was being applied to his eyes. He blinked repeatedly, ensuring the drops covered his entire eye surface. "All right, you're now ready. You must return before sunset, or you will have failed," the elder declared, stepping back to his initial position. Kurapika nodded in acknowledgement, his determination evident in his gaze. Seeing that the elder had finished preparing Kurapika, his parents approached him with one with a worried expression and another with a stern one. "Kurapika, remember to stay calm during the test," his mother said. She wore a crimson kurta garment with delicate pink patterns over a cream-colored undershirt. Her short blonde hair was slightly darker than Kurapika's, and her eyes were a soft shade of gray. She affectionately patted Kurapika on the head. His father, dressed in a dark green kurta adorned with light blue designs over a white undershirt, joined in. He had neatly combed short black hair and snow-colored pants. Turning to Kurapika, he added, "Be cautious on your journey." Kurapika nodded in response. "It's all right, Mom, Dad. I've got this." Kurapika raised a confident fist, trying to ease his parents' concerns. "Kurapika is stronger than he looks. He'll do just fine," Pyro added with a supportive smile from the sidelines. Kurapika nodded in agreement, feeling bolstered by Pyro's words. "See? Pyro believes in me, too." His parents chuckled softly, exchanging amused glances at Kurapika's determination. After bidding his parents farewell with tight hugs, Kurapika turned to Pyro and embraced him as well. With a final wave to his family, he set off to begin his final test. As he disappeared into the distance, Kurapika's voice echoed back, filled with determination. "I'll be back before you know it." As Kurapika's figure grew smaller in the distance, Pyro watched him go with a mixture of emotions, his fist tightening around the vial in his robe. Secretly examining the vial, which was identical to the one used to administer eye drops to Kurapika, Pyro murmured to himself, "Stay safe out there. Everything will work out if you just come back before sunset." As Kurapika's figure vanished into the depths of the forest, the clan members dispersed to attend to their own tasks. The elder remained behind, his gaze fixed on the direction Kurapika had gone. "Grain, could you do me a favor and keep an eye on Kurapika?" the elder asked, his voice carrying a hint of concern. Grain, a man clad entirely in black attire, sneered at the elder's request. "You? Concerned about him? Times must be changing," he remarked, a dark mole beneath his left lip adding to his ominous demeanor. Chapter 80. Grain couldn't believe it. The elder he knew was always strict and focused on the clan's well-being. He couldn't care less about his own son, much less Kurapika, who was just part of the clan. The elder sighed, understanding Grain's doubt. "People change, Grain. Even the toughest can soften over time," he explained patiently. "Just keep an eye on Kurapika, as I asked." Grain rolled his eyes, clearly unimpressed. "All right, but how long do I have to stick around in this boring village?" he grumbled, scratching his head in frustration. "Not for long," the elder replied curtly. "And what if I just decide to leave on my own?" Grain frowned, feeling unsatisfied. The elder met his gaze with seriousness. "Grain, don't force me to order the clan to find my own son." "Crazy old man." Grain rolled his eyes, a mixture of annoyance and resignation evident on his face. "Like you even consider me part of the family." "Fine, whatever. I'll be glad to leave this place and take a break," he muttered irritably. "Be careful of what you're doing out there, Grain," the elder cautioned his son with a furrowed brow. He couldn't shake off the uneasy feeling he had when Grain returned earlier, the scent of blood clinging to him. "You reap what you sow." "Why? You taught me the way I am right now. What's the big deal?" Grain retorted, brushing off his father's concern as he headed out after Kurapika. "You reap what you sow, indeed." The elder muttered self-depreciatingly as he sighed heavily, conflicted by his thoughts. He trailed off, remembering the young woman who had crossed paths with Kurapika and Pyro and inspired Kurapika to set his eyes upon the world and be adventurous. His memories drifted to the open book on his desk titled Dino Hunter as he muttered, "Am I wrong to keep us isolated from the outside world?" As Kurapika emerged from the forest, he marveled at the sight of the small town sprawled before him. His eyes sparkled with wonder as he took in the unfamiliar surroundings. "Wow! This must be the outside world," he whispered in awe, gazing at the quaint town stretching out before him. "And this is just a small town?" His imagination ran wild, envisioning what larger towns might look like. Let's see what it looks like from the inside." With a gleeful giggle, he eagerly ventured into the heart of the town. However, his excitement was not met with the same warmth from the townsfolk. Instead, their eyes bore into Kurapika, their expressions wary as they noticed his distinctive clan robe. Murmurs spread through the crowd as fingers pointed in his direction. Lost in the novelty of the town, Kurapika wandered, completely absorbed in his exploration. Oh no! The test! With a sudden jolt of realization, Kurapika's eyes widened, and he slapped his forehead in dismay. Recalling a large grocery store he had spotted earlier, Kurapika hastily retraced his steps, determined to fulfill his duty. Whoa, so this is a grocery store? Upon entering the store, he was struck by the vast array of goods lining the shelves, his eyes widening with wonder at the sight. Spotting someone grabbing a basket, Kurapika followed suit, retrieving the list of items provided by the clansman. "All right, let's do this." With focused determination, he swiftly gathered each item on the list, ensuring not a single one was overlooked. However, after he's done with everything, Kurapika realized something. This is too easy, isn't it? Kurapika was a bit confused by how smoothly things were going. However, despite his confusion, he was glad that his task seemed simple. With his groceries in hand, Kurapika joined the line at the checkout counter, following the example of the other shoppers. My grocery bag and the money. Why you? As he reached for his bag and prepared to pay, a sudden scream rang out, startling him. He turned to see a man pointing at Kurapika's robe with his face contorted with fear. Why you demon? It must have been you who killed my daughter." The scene erupted into chaos as the man accused Kurapika of a heinous crime, his voice shaking with rage and grief. Without warning, he lunged at Kurapika, his hand closing around the kid's neck with a vice-like grip, intent on delivering his brand of justice. The sudden assault took Kurapika aback, his mind reeling as he struggled to comprehend the situation. "Don't do this, man. Let him go, goddammit. You'll get all of us killed." Panic spread like wildfire through the store as onlookers pleaded for the man to stop. Their voices were full of fear and desperation. Kurapika didn't understand what the man was talking about as he tried to open up his mouth. Amen. Unfortunately, his words were choked off by the tightening grip around his throat. No. This can't be happening. He fought against the man's overpowering strength, gasping for air as his vision blurred. Inwardly, Kurapika tried to calm himself, to quell the rising tide of panic threatening to consume him. But just as he reached a breaking point, something within him shifted. Kurapika's expression darkened with anger as he glared at the man who had accused him, feeling unjustly accused and insulted. His eyes, normally a deep, tranquil blue, suddenly blazed scarlet, radiating an aura of power that seemed to peer straight into the man's soul. The man's fear became tangible as his grip loosened, and he stumbled back in terror. "You're a demon! A demon!" he shrieked, his voice shaking with fear, before hastily letting go of Kurapika and fleeing in a state of panic. As the man let go of Kurapika, a collective sigh of relief swept through the store. But no one dared to approach him. Fear was evident in their eyes as they glanced at Kurapika with unease, causing him to struggle to catch his breath and cough violently. Looking around, Kurapika noticed the wary gazes directed at him as if he were some kind of threat. He couldn't help but wonder if this was the reason for the strange final test. "They're all discriminating against me," he muttered to himself, quickly gathering his groceries and paying for them. Feeling the weight of the town's hostility pressing down on him, Kurapika's only desire was to escape the unsettling atmosphere as quickly as possible. Meanwhile, after fleeing from Kurapika, the man collided with another person in his panicked escape. I'm sorry," he muttered in a fearful tone as he was about to continue. However, this new individual blocked him, which made him look up as he felt his whole being run cold. The one blocking him was dressed in all black and sporting menacing scarlet eyes that greeted him with a chilling calmness. "Hey there, haven't we met before?" Grain greeted as he licked his lips excitedly. Hours later, the town erupted in hysterical screams as horrified residents stumbled upon a gruesome scene of a mutilated body, its limbs arranged in a ghastly circle, a macabre spectacle that sent shivers down their spines. Meanwhile, in Meteor City, Taka's jaw dropped in astonishment as he looked at the once dilapidated building, now transformed into a stylish restaurant that seemed out of place in its surroundings. "What on earth?" he muttered, disbelief evident in his voice. He had come intending to mock Raymond and the others, expecting to find something to laugh at. But what he saw before him exceeded his wildest expectations. Raymond emerged from the building, spotting Taka's stunned expression. He chuckled knowingly, "Looks like it's your first day on the job, kid. Better get ready." Chapter 81 In the Kurta clan's village, tension hung heavy in the air as everyone waited at the entrance, the setting sun casting long shadows around them. "Do you think Kurapika will make it in time?" Kurapika's mother asked, her voice tinged with concern. "He'll be fine, dear. He's our son, after all," her husband replied, trying to sound confident despite the gnawing worry in his chest. As the minutes ticked by, the worry etched deeper lines on the father's face, his fists clenched in silent apprehension. Pyro stood alongside the other members of the Kurta clan at the entrance gate, anxiously awaiting Kurapika's return. He couldn't stop thinking about his decision to swap the vial of eye drops for Kurapika. The idea of his friend failing weighed heavily on his mind, but he also felt a glimmer of excitement at the possibility of Kurapika's success and the adventures that awaited his childhood friend. Kurapika should be fine with Grain around. The elder felt a wave of relief as he glanced down the path leading out of the village. He trusted Grain to keep Kurapika safe. Among the villagers, there was a palpable sense of anxiety as they waited for Kurapika's return. "Oh? Is that Kurapika?" Suddenly, a small figure with blonde hair emerged on the path, prompting exclamations of relief and joy from the crowd. "He's back. Kurapika made it." Their worries dissipated as they looked at Kurapika's eyes, glad to see them unchanged. However, Kurapika couldn't hide his disappointment as he made his way back to the village. "I messed up," he muttered to himself, feeling defeated. Despite his attempts to stay calm, Kurapika knew he had slipped up by revealing his scarlet eyes during the earlier incident. Glancing at Pyro standing nearby, Kurapika felt guilty. "Sorry, Pyro," he whispered, realizing he wouldn't be able to keep his promise to help restore his friend's vision. Approaching the village entrance, Kurapika felt a heavy hand on his shoulder. It was the elder, trying to offer some comfort. But Kurapika's frustration lingered as he clenched his fist, unsure if anything could lift his spirits. However, "Congratulations on completing the final test, Kurapika," the elder announced. "Huh?" Kurapika responded, surprised by the unexpected declaration. The elder's words sank in, and Kurapika's eyes widened with disbelief. "Now that you've passed the final test, you are free to leave the clan and venture outside," the elder explained, mistaking Kurapika's shock for excitement at the prospect of exploring the outside world. The elder sighed, fondness evident in his expression as he regarded Kurapika. Despite frequently reprimanding him for his mischievous behavior, the elder had a soft spot for the kid. Kneeling down to meet Kurapika at eye level, he spoke softly, "When the time comes, make sure you return to us and share your adventures." Kurapika's initial confusion melted away, replaced by gratitude and determination. "Ah? Yes, thank you, elder," he replied, bowing respectfully. Though unsure of how he managed to pass the exam, Kurapika was resolved not to waste this opportunity. That evening, Kurapika celebrated his success with his parents and Pyro. Excitement bubbled within him as he eagerly anticipated leaving the following day. Despite the less than pleasant encounter in the town, Kurapika remained curious about the world beyond. He still yearned to see if the ocean was truly as blue as described in books. What the hell? In Meteor City, Luke couldn't contain his surprise as he watched Raymond skillfully craft wooden bowls, plates, and chopsticks from gathered wood. The others were equally astonished by Raymond's handiwork. As Luke observed the stone stove that Raymond had constructed himself, he turned to him with a puzzled expression. "Raymond, is there anything you can't do?" he asked incredulously. Raymond paused his crafting, setting down his tools and looking at Luke and the others. "I can't go on a hunt with my hands full like this. You go get some meat for the restaurant in the forest. I saw some wild boar while going out a while ago," he directed, gesturing towards the forest. Luke let out an exasperated sigh, feeling weary from days without sleep. "We haven't slept in almost 2 days. Can't we rest first?" he pleaded, hoping for some leniency. But Raymond remained firm. "Don't be lazy. Just do it," he insisted, his tone leaving no room for argument. Sigh. "All right, boss." Luke massaged his temple wearily. With a collective sigh, the group gathered their belongings and headed out into the forest. Taka observed the interaction with a mischievous smirk, clearly finding amusement in their predicament. "I saw it, you brat." But when Luke shot him a sharp look, Taka quickly averted his gaze, feigning innocence. Luke's warning didn't deter Taka's attitude, though. As soon as Luke had left the restaurant, Taka retorted defiantly, "Hee, what can you do, even if you saw that? Quit it, kid." Raymond's hand swung swiftly, connecting with Taka's head, earning a pained groan from him. Taka rubbed his head, shooting Raymond an annoyed glare. "Why'd you do that?" Raymond merely shook his head, unfazed, having already prepared everything necessary for their kitchen. "You've got a task too." Taka's apprehension grew as he eyed Raymond warily, recalling the brutal efficiency with which Raymond had handled his own subordinates. "What do you want me to do?" Raymond chuckled softly at Taka's cautious expression. "Lead me to that old man's place. We're opening shop tomorrow, and I want to extend him an invitation." "Eh, that's it? I can take you right there, Aniki." Taka's enthusiastic nod conveyed his readiness, relieved he wouldn't have to undertake the same arduous tasks as Luke and the others. With a nod, Raymond followed Taka through the city streets until they reached a dilapidated building. Its roof sagged, and its wooden walls showed signs of decay. "Grandpa Jiro, you home?" Taka's voice echoed through the quiet surroundings. Ignoring protocol, he pushed the door open, revealing Sakujiro inside, his expression dark. Taka's excitement faltered, replaced by embarrassment as he scratched his head. "I can explain." "Clearly, you can," Sakujiro responded, directing his attention to Raymond. Raymond acknowledged Sakujiro's gaze with a nod, then turned to Taka. "All right, kid, your job is done for today." "All right," Taka replied, then turned to Sakujiro. "I want to buy some bread as well, Grandpa." "Just take some." "It's on me," Raymond interjected, prompting a delighted exclamation from Taka. "Really? You're the best, Aniki." Without a word, Sakujiro handed Taka some darkened bread, which he happily accepted before bidding farewell and departing, leaving Raymond and Sakujiro alone. After a brief silence between them, Sakujiro finally opened his mouth. "Now, pay up." "I don't have the money," Raymond admitted, his tone steady despite the weight of his words. "What did you just say?" Sakujiro's expression darkened, his eyes narrowing as he processed Raymond's response. Chapter 82-. Raymond's gaze stopped at something as he observed the picture on the wall, taking in the image of the young girl with a heart-shaped purse. "Your daughter?" he asked softly, noting the fact that it was the only thing that stood out the most in the house. Sakujiro's eyes flickered with emotion as he gazed at the picture, memories flooding back. Despite his appearance suggesting otherwise, many would have mistaken him for the girl's grandfather. Yet, to Sakujiro, she was more like a daughter than a granddaughter. With a complex expression, Sakujiro nodded. "Yes," he replied quietly. Raymond decided it was best not to press further about Sakujiro's daughter, diverting his attention to the darkened bread instead. He reached for one, asking casually, "Mind if I eat one?" "You haven't paid for the others," Sakujiro reminded him sternly. Ignoring the warning, Raymond took a bite, immediately sensing the bitter taste of the bread's spoiled ingredients. Despite this, he continued chewing as if unaffected, quickly finishing it off. Sakujiro watched with a mixture of speechlessness and annoyance. His eyes narrowed as he scrutinized Raymond. "You clearly aren't a beggar, yet you eat such bread as if it's nothing. Who are you?" "I grew up in a slum, so this bread is kind of nostalgic for me," Raymond explained, noticing Sakujiro's deepening frown. Still, Raymond's lack of denial about being homeless confirmed Sakujiro's suspicions. "I don't care, pay up." Ignoring Sakujiro's reminder about payment, Raymond continued, "Have you heard this saying? You haven't paid yet. A man who blames others has a long way to go. You haven't paid yet. A man who blames himself is halfway there." Sakujiro fell silent at Raymond's words. Raymond chuckled softly. "Well, I guess I should pay up, right? Still, I don't have any money, but I'd like to offer you free food tomorrow." "Free food?" "Yes, our restaurant will open for business tomorrow. You're welcome to stop by whenever you're free." Sakujiro narrowed his eyes at Raymond, feeling slightly distrustful as he remembered the rundown state of the building a while back. However, Raymond began to leave, prompting Sakujiro to sigh. He had expected Raymond not to pay at all as he muttered, "I suppose I can be generous today." Crazy guy. He watched Raymond's figure fade away into the distance in silence. Sakujiro closed the door annoyedly as he was about to rest. However, his interaction with Raymond couldn't help but give him pause. He turned to gaze at the innocent smile of the little girl in the picture as he walked closer. It was years ago, right in this very place. Laughter filled the room as Sakujiro enjoyed a drink amidst his men, his family. "What are you guys drinking?" Suddenly, the childlike voice of a little girl pierced through the jovial atmosphere, drawing everyone's attention to their curious guest who had entered with wide eyes. "Hey, little girl, this isn't the place for you," one of the men cautioned. "Yeah, go find somewhere else to play," another chimed in. But the little girl seemed unfazed by their warnings, her curiosity still piqued as she looked around with wide eyes, eliciting laughter from the men. "Ha ha ha, she's fearless. Quite an interesting kiddo." Sakujiro rose from his seat, his imposing figure towering over the girl. "All right, kiddo, what brings you here?" he asked, his voice gruff but not unkind. "Hey, boss, take it easy. Don't scare the little one." "Yeah, we don't need a crying kid in here." "I'm not gonna cry," the girl retorted, puffing out her cheeks in defiance, which only elicited more laughter from the men. Sakujiro sighed and knelt down to the girl's level. "All right, what do you want?" I want to try some of these drinks," she declared, pointing to the shabby glasses on the table. Sakujiro shook his head, his voice stern. "No, you can't. Those are for us." "Can't I? Won't you share with me?" "Why not?" she persisted, undeterred by his refusal. Sakujiro found her persistence amusing, and he couldn't help but smirk at her boldness. "As I said, we found these at the junkyard ourselves, so they belong to us." The girl seemed to ponder for a moment before reaching into her heart-shaped purse and pulling something out. "Then what about this? Let's trade." With a mischievous glint in her eyes, she extended her hands toward Sakujiro, offering him something. "What's this? Bread?" Sakujiro inspected the darkened loaf skeptically, realizing it was far from fresh. "This bread isn't fit for eating," he remarked bluntly. "Eh? But I thought it was better than what I found yesterday," the little girl muttered, her disappointment evident. Sakujiro felt a pang of guilt as he saw her dejected expression, and the accusing glares from his companions only made him feel worse. "You made her cry. Such a big meanie. It's my fault," he mumbled, scratching his head awkwardly under their scrutiny. Taking the bread from the girl's hand, he inspected it once more before relenting. "Fine, you can have it. It's just an apple juice anyway." "Really? Yay. You're the best, Grandpa," she exclaimed with glee, her eyes shining with excitement. Sakujiro couldn't help but chuckle at her enthusiasm, though he felt a twinge of embarrassment at being called Grandpa by someone. She called Boss Grandpa, ha 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 ha. "See, I told you to shave your hair bald because of this, ha ha ha." Amidst the laughter and teasing, Sakujiro's companions couldn't help but find the little girl's innocence and curiosity endearing. Her presence brought a lively atmosphere to the room, contrasting with the rough exterior of the group. They looked at her differently, they were completely charmed by her natural ability to bring joy. "I'm still middle-aged, you brat," Sakujiro retorted, though his tone was more playful than annoyed. Ignoring his protest, she continued with her innocent questions. "What's your name, Grandpa?" "Sakujiro. And you?" he replied, giving in to her persistent curiosity. Hee, so it's Grandpa Jiro." The little girl giggled happily. "My name is Sarasa." A heavy sigh echoed through the room as Sakujiro gazed at the picture of Sarasa on the wall. Ever since that day, Sarasa had become a frequent visitor to their base camp, and without realizing it, Sakujiro had grown attached to the little girl as if she were his own daughter. He vividly remembered the joy on her face when she excitedly presented a pinhole camera she had discovered in the junkyard, only for it to disappointingly break after taking her picture. Sakujiro's chest felt weighed down with emotion as he reminisced about that initial meeting with the spirited little girl. Chapter 83. The next day, Raymond observed Jake and Logan as they hung up the banner for their restaurant, crafted from a simple wooden board. "Is it symmetrical now?" Jake turned to Raymond, seeking approval. Raymond nodded in satisfaction. "Looks good enough to me." With the weather clearing up, the restaurant became more visible, standing out despite its location on the outskirts of the city, where few homeless people tended to linger. "Hey, do you see that?" "Yeah, what is it? Did my eyes just go bad? I swear there was only rubble around here last time." Passers-by scavenging for food amidst the heaps of trash, noticed the restaurant and pointed at it in confusion, intrigued by its presence in such an unexpected place. "Dumpster delights? Seems appropriate for this spot," Luke remarked, eyeing the banner bearing the restaurant's name. Turning to Raymond, he inquired, "So, what's the plan now?" Taka, who had arrived earlier, also glanced at Raymond, curious about the next steps. Raymond grinned confidently. "I cook," he declared. With that, they all filed into the restaurant, leaving the door and windows open as Raymond got to work in the kitchen. "Get the fire going," Raymond instructed, motioning to the stone griddle he had made with his kitchen knife coated with his nen. "Noted, boss." Aideen approached, igniting the flames beneath the stove made of similar stone. With precision, Raymond deftly began to skin the boar, swiftly separating what was needed with his expert knife skills. Each movement of his blade was precise and efficient, effortlessly slicing through the tough hide as if it were mere butter. Finishing with the skinning process, Raymond immediately began cooking. As the cooking progressed, the enticing aroma of the sizzling meat wafted through the air, mingling with the foul odors of the surrounding trash heaps. "Ha, as expected, his cooking is the best." Luke couldn't help but salivate at the mouth-watering scent, his lips moistening with anticipation. Taka's eyes lit up with excitement, and he found himself drooling at the delicious smell. Despite the unpleasant surroundings, the delicious scent drew the attention of passers-by, piquing their curiosity about the small restaurant. And so it began. The small restaurant started gaining attention for its delicious meals at pocket-friendly prices. Luke and his companions enjoyed themselves, feasting, chatting, and laughing on the opening day, while Taka tried his best to manage the influx of customers since he had never done this in the first place. Exclamation mark. As everyone savored their first bites, their eyes widened in amazement. The meat was tender and succulent, melting in their mouths with each flavorful bite. Is this real life? The tantalizing flavors had them questioning if they had stumbled upon paradise. "Owner, can we have seconds?" they pleaded with Raymond, willing to empty their wallets for another taste. But Raymond shook his head firmly. "One meal per person only." "Huh? But it's so delicious." "Exactly, because it's delicious, I want everyone to have a chance to enjoy it." Exclamation mark. These bums were taken aback by Raymond's words. Despite their tough exterior, they knew the importance of looking out for one another in this harsh city where they had only each other to rely on. Raymond's words struck a chord with them, and they left the restaurant, spreading his message of generosity throughout the city. Dumpster Delight became an instant hit as more and more people flocked to savor its delicious offerings. Still, with limited meat supplies, they had to close shop by nightfall. However, "We still have some meat left for all of us." However, Raymond's reassuring words brought relief to Luke and the others inside the now closed restaurant. Their faces lit up with joy at the prospect of another savory meal prepared by Raymond. "Aniki, can I take it home?" Taka asked tentatively, his voice filled with hope. Raymond looked at Taka's figure in silence for a moment before nodding in agreement. "Sure, just give me a moment," he replied. Without saying a word, Raymond quickly went to the back of the room and grabbed a piece of wood. With his kitchen knife, he skillfully carved it into a container resembling a bento box. Each cut was precise, creating smooth edges and patterns on the wood. Next, he cooked the remaining meat perfectly, filling the air with its delicious scent. Carefully, he placed the cooked meat inside the wooden container, arranging it neatly. Handing the container to Taka, Raymond smiled. "Here you go," he said simply. "Thanks, Aniki. You're awesome," Taka said happily, grateful for the tasty treat. With a nod, Taka hurried off into the city, eager to enjoy the meal at home with Sin. "He's surprisingly adaptable for his first day, a real tough kid," Luke remarked, and the others at the table nodded in agreement. He then turned to Raymond, who watched Taka disappear in silence, and teased, "Hey, boss. Time for dinner service." Raymond shook his head with a small smile before heading to the kitchen. The sound of sizzling meat filled the restaurant as he cooked, and soon the fragrant aroma filled the air. With precision, he placed the cooked meat on the table. As they dug into their meal, they noticed Raymond hadn't joined them. "Boss, aren't you eating?" Aideen asked as he was a bit puzzled. Raymond remained behind the kitchen counter, focused on his knife. He simply replied, "Not hungry." "Didn't you say there was enough for all of us?" Luke asked, puzzled by Raymond's refusal to eat. Raymond nodded. "I gave my share to someone else," he replied calmly. Luke's eyes widened as he realized something as he shook his head with a small chuckle. "Take half of mine then." "Ours too then." "Well, I can't say no to such free food, guys. Appreciate it," Raymond said, his smile warm and genuine. "But could you guys go to the forest to hunt some wild boar again tonight? That's not how you thank someone for their generosity, you know." Luke couldn't help but facepalm at Raymond's request. Raymond's smile remained unchanged, but there was a firmness in his gaze. "Why? You've been having fun throughout the day with no work, time to work." Now that Raymond mentioned that, they couldn't bring themselves to argue any more as they ate their fill before going out with a sigh. Meanwhile, not far from the Meteor City, a woman with pink hair stepped cautiously towards the city outskirts after emerging from the dense forest. She glanced around, noting the familiar sights with a hint of nostalgia. "It's been a while since I was last here," she muttered softly to herself. Her mind drifted to the old man with gray hair who had safeguarded Saras's belongings as she continued, "Let's hope you're still alive, old man." Chapter 84 Maki noticed a gang of people who appeared to be grumbling as she walked toward the city. "Boss is just too much. I want to go to bed, though." "Agree. Be quiet, follow the instructions quickly, and we'll go to sleep if you do that." As they cautiously approached the forest, she couldn't help but stare at them in a peculiar way. Maki shook her head and muttered, "Psychos." Then she proceeded to enter. With the moonlight shining so brightly today, she noticed a little eatery in Meteor City called Dumpster Delights, which caused her to raise an eyebrow. The man who constructed it must have been yet another psycho, or so she thought as she shook her head. As she continued her journey deeper into the city, she eventually reached Sakujiro's place. She sighed, remembering how the place looked in her memories, but it now looked much rundown. Approaching the door slowly, she knocked on it several times without speaking a word. However, the door remained unopened after several minutes, causing her to frown and ask, "Is he asleep already or is he dead?" Just as Maki was about to rap on the door once more, it swung open, revealing Sakujiro's expressionless face. Exclamation mark. Maki's eyes shook slightly at the sight of him. "Huh? Long time no see, old man. I came back too." Maki was a little flustered by the awkwardness as she struggled to find the right words. Slam. However, Sakujiro abruptly closed the door without waiting for her to finish speaking, slamming it shut in her face. He did this without waiting for her to finish speaking. Question mark. When Maki finally understood what was going on, she couldn't help but blink her eyes in shock. "You old fart, at least wait until I finish what I was about to say," she yelled, her face red with rage. Her screams resounded throughout the arena, and as she saw Sakujiro wasn't even bothered to respond to her outburst, profanity began to freely flow out of her mouth. Those who overheard her stared at her with curiosity. Outside, Maki was yelling, but inside the building, Sakujiro shook his head, sat down on his bed of lined tires, closed his eyes, and slept. What a jerk. Maki searched for a spot to lie down and nap, humping irritably as she walked away. She absent-mindedly glanced at Sakujiro's locations while whispering, "You old fart, just wait and see. I'll be coming every single day." Back at Dumpster Delights, Raymond sat at one of the chairs in the restaurant, tapping the table rhythmically. "So, anything useful for survival here as currency, huh?" he muttered, glancing at the table where customers had left their payments. Among the items were coin-like tokens, plain and featureless, reminiscent of the ones Taka had carried in his pouch a while back. Although Raymond hadn't seen what's inside Taka's pouch himself, he was certain they were the same. These tokens were said to melt easily, even at lower temperatures, and could be molded into various useful shapes, making them the most valuable currency in Meteor City. But I still don't understand how these coins can be so valuable. Do I miss something here? Raymond muttered slowly as his mind raced with his thought. The rest of the payment consisted of firewood, shabby clothing fabric, and other essentials highly valued by the city's residents. Their rough exterior may be intimidating, but they certainly looked each other quite well, he chuckled to himself, recalling his interactions with the residents of the city. Raymond was actually quite surprised at the fact that conflict was rare among them. Instead, they seemed united in their struggle to survive, which was a rarity in such a harsh environment. Still, it was thanks to Taco which served as a catalyst for him to blend in. Though Raymond could understand why Taco was well liked among the residents. Despite his mischievousness, he possessed an innate innocence that endeared him to others. Listening to their conversations, sometimes even joining in, while preparing their meals, Raymond effortlessly integrated himself into their circle. His curiosity and questions were not just idle chatter, they were a means to gather valuable information. They didn't mention anything about the elder's existence at all, but... Raymond paused, his tapping finger halting on the table as his gaze sharpened. There seemed to be a group of thugs here too, huh? He pondered the implications. If things go right in my favor, I will bring prosperity to the city, and they certainly wouldn't mind, but those thugs and the elders might not think the same. Then. It's decided. Raymond's crimson eyes flickered with resolve. I'll go meet this Watanabe guy. As the night faded into dawn, Raymond glanced at Luke and the others who were still sound asleep. Their nighttime hunt had led them deep into the forest, where the wild boar sought refuge in a safer, more secluded area. This meant they had to work harder to gather the meat they needed. I'll let them sleep for a bit, then. He muttered as he started preparing for the restaurant to open. At the same time, in the village of the Corta clan, the clansmen gathered at the village entrance to bid farewell to Kurapika, who is leaving the village for who knows how long. That child was able to pass the exam. Under the shadow of a wooden house, Grain watched Kurapika's figure with interest. The fact that the child was now saying goodbye to the clansmen confused Grain a little, even though he remembered seeing that the child had activated his eyes at the tiny town in response to the unexpected attack. Is this also your doing? Glancing over at the elder of the Corta clan, Grain scowled and said, seems like he truly went soft. It was completely out of character for him, but he couldn't help but make fun of the elder. He assumed the elder was behind it. People used to say that if you went soft, it meant you were going to die soon. Then it's great. I can do anything I want if you die quickly. In his excitement, Grain's eyes twitched uncontrollably, and he smirked at the idea. Kurapika. No matter what, always remain calm. It's possible that your short temper could land you in trouble, alright? Okay, Mom, I'm no longer a child. Your age is 12. No matter how old you are, my child, you will always be my little one. When his mother nagged him, Kurapika could only smile wryly and glance over at his father for some help. But his father paid him no mind and curled his lips slightly, as if he was relishing in the situation. Kurapika, don't limit yourself to working for a cure, savor the journey while you're at it. I know, Pyro, but your cure would be the priority so we could roam the world together. Kurapika exclaimed, his voice filled with anticipation. Then, I'll be waiting. Pyro shook his head, his smile growing wider. I won't say anything more since your mother already covered everything, but be careful out there. His father's voice was firm as Kurapika nodded in understanding. Each member of his family and friends offered their own words of caution and well wishes as Kurapika bid them farewell one by one. I'll see you guys again in a few months. With each step he took away from his village, he turned back to Wave, his heart brimming with excitement and determination. He vowed to embark on his journey and share his adventures with his fellow clansmen, hoping to inspire them to explore beyond the confines of their village. Chapter 85 Aniki, thank you for the extra meat yesterday. My brother and I really enjoyed it. He said it was delicious. Raymond unlocked the doors to the restaurant, greeted by Taka's excited voice. Taka approached him, offering a respectful bow. "Ah, here's the container you gave me. I cleaned it up," Taka said, handing over the food container from yesterday. Raymond accepted the box, noticing that it wasn't cleaned very well and still had some stains on it. However, given their location, this was probably the best cleaning job the kid could manage. Raymond looked at Taka silently for a moment before he finally spoke up, "Help me clean up the restaurant." "All right." Taka agreed eagerly. Together, they set about preparing the restaurant for the day's customers. After finishing the cleaning, Raymond headed to the kitchen counter in the restaurant. He found Taka sitting patiently at one of the chairs, looking at him with curiosity. "Have you had breakfast yet?" "Breakfast? I never have breakfast," Taka replied honestly. Raymond observed Taka's slightly malnourished appearance, understanding the reason now. Despite that, he was impressed by the kid's dedication as a waiter yesterday. "Well, you'll be having one from today," Raymond spoke with a shake of his head. "Eh? Really? But Taka's initial surprise quickly turned into joy, but then he felt a pang of guilt at the thought of enjoying a good meal while his brother went without. Raymond seemed to sense Taka's inner conflict. "The restaurant will open in an hour. There's plenty of time. I'll cook for two, and you can bring one back to your brother." "But, is it okay?" Taka asked, feeling a bit embarrassed for inconveniencing Raymond. "It's fine, just do your job well," Raymond reassured him with a gentle shake of his head. "Ah? Thank you, Aniki." Taka replied gratefully, feeling relieved and grateful for Raymond's kindness. Raymond began slicing the meat, the knife effortlessly gliding through its tender flesh. He placed the cuts on the counter before heading to the storage area to fetch some wood. Meanwhile, he set aside the box container Taka had given him and crafted a new one. Soon, the room was filled with the tantalizing aroma of sizzling meat, causing Taka's mouth to water with anticipation. "Are we open already, Raymond?" Luke roused from his sleep by the scent as he groggily asked and sat at the table next to Taka with his head drooping with fatigue. "Not yet." Taka looked at Luke in confusion, but Raymond paid him no mind. "What's that delicious smell? It's making me hungry," Logan remarked, rubbing his stomach. "It must be boss. He's cooking something," Jake chimed in. "I'd love to go back to sleep, but my stomach has other plans," Aideen complained, his eyes still heavy with sleep. Gradually, everyone began to stir, drawn to the table by the irresistible aroma wafting from Raymond's cooking. They tried to resist the urge to indulge their hunger, but their grumbling stomachs betrayed their intentions. However, Raymond suddenly stopped his cooking, setting aside the meat he had prepared in the newly crafted box. He handed it to Taka, who received it with gratitude before the boy left to share it with Sin. Resuming his cooking, Raymond worked diligently until the meal was ready. They all then gathered around the table to enjoy their breakfast together. Once everyone had finished eating, Taka returned, signaling that it was time to open the restaurant. "Is it finally open?" "It appears so. Welcome, everyone. Dumpster Delights is officially open for the day. Please come in," Taka announced with a happy grin on his face. The hungry crowd outside, enticed by the delicious aroma emanating from the restaurant, wasted no time in flooding inside. Meanwhile, across the city, Maki found herself still being avoided by the old man. Irritation bubbled within her as she pondered the situation. She understood the sentimental value of Sarasa's belongings to Sakajiro. They had tried to get them so many times before, only to face resistance and annoyance from the old man. However, Maki couldn't help but feel frustrated by his stubbornness, especially considering the circumstances. "But we have a good reason this time, you stubborn old fool," she muttered under her breath as she navigated the bustling streets of the city, lost in her thoughts. However, she then stumbled upon a bustling crowd and raised her eyebrows in curiosity. What's going on here? It was the restaurant she had encountered last night, which piqued her interest. She navigated her way through the throng of people. However, some people in the crowd seemed familiar with her. Hey, didn't she left a while back with the other kids? I think so. They pointed fingers in her direction, diverting everyone's attention to her as she entered the restaurant. Hey kid, tell your boss to give me a bigger portion. No chance, he's cutting them all the same size like a madman. As Maki stepped inside, she was greeted by a boisterous and lively atmosphere, which took her by surprise. A kid she didn't recognize grumbled in response to a homeless man's request, who appeared to be a customer at the restaurant. Ha ha ha, come on kid, just put in a good word for me. The homeless man chuckled, hoping for some preferential treatment. Not happening, the kid replied, annoyed, as he cleared plates from a nearby table. The kid's right. Besides, I'm right here so I can hear you clearly. And no special treatment for you, a calm voice cut through the playful banter, drawing Maki's attention to the man cooking behind the counter. He appeared to be around her age, wearing a freshly made apron, with sharp crimson eyes fixed on his task. See, I told you. Taka smirked mischievously at the homeless man, who scratched his head awkwardly. Well, as long as I get to eat the owner's cooking, I'm good. However, as Taka turned around, he noticed a new customer entering. Ah? My bad, I didn't see you come in. I got distracted by that annoying old man. I heard that you brat. The homeless man grumbled. But everyone else just laughed in response, including Raymond, who chuckled softly. Welcome. Please take a seat over there. Taka greeted Maki as she arrived, gesturing to an empty chair at one of the tables. So, this place is really a restaurant, huh? Maki muttered in slight disbelief at the sight of such a place in Meteor City. Raymond then glanced at their unexpected guest, his crimson eyes meeting her slightly bluish pupils. He curled his lips in interest. Oh, it seems we have an unexpected visitor this time. Chapter 86 and 87 was an author's note. Sue skipped. Also short pause. Take this chance for the cult's break. Sue the YouTube overlords doesn't get mad. So hi YouTube algorithm, we love transformation. Okay anyway, did you know, Togashi used to redraw old panels directly onto tracing paper. He once confessed to copying his own art to save time on redrawing chapters. Now let's jump back into the fanfic. Chapter 88. Aniki, one order for this Nichin. As Maki settled into her seat, Taka hurriedly shouted to Raymond as he disappeared into the back of the restaurant to clean up some dirty wooden plates. But I haven't even seen the menu to order yet. Maki spoke, her expression reflecting her confusion. Raymond shook his head in response. We don't have such luxuries in this kind of place, so we only have one item. Well, I guess you're right, Maki conceded after a moment of thought. It made sense, and she nodded in understanding. Are you not from around here? Raymond inquired, a gentle smile playing on his lips. Maki felt a flush of embarrassment and looked away before responding, attempting to clarify, I'm from here. It's just been a long time since I came back. Oh? Is it finally our Raymond's springtime? Luke interjected with a snicker from the side, joined by the others who seemed to agree with him. Their laughter filled the room, and they watched Raymond's interaction with interest. Raymond could hear their banter but chose to ignore it, his eyes flashing with a cunning light. Oh? You seem quite fond of this place to come back. Maki shrugged dismissively. Not really. I don't care about this place, though the others might. The others? Raymond inquired, his interest piqued. Ah, sorry about that. I was talking about some friends of mine. Maki scratched her head awkwardly, realizing her slip-up. That's fine, Raymond chuckled gently, causing Maki to blush with embarrassment. So, What brought you back then? Maki fell silent, her mind swirling with thoughts of Sakujiro's recent avoidance. Frustration bubbled within her, and she couldn't contain it any longer. Arg, so annoying. You just had to remind me of that old fart. With a sudden burst of emotion, she slammed her hands onto the table and let out a frustrated roar. The restaurant fell into a stunned silence, with everyone staring at Maki in disbelief. Wow, she went from surprised to embarrassed to angry real quick. I've heard women can be unpredictable, but this is something else. Whispers rippled through the room as Maki felt a flush of embarrassment creeping up her cheeks. Ahem. She coughed awkwardly, trying to regain her composure. Raymond stepped forward, offering Maki her plate with a sympathetic smile. Sorry for getting on your nerves. Here, consider this meal on me as an apology for bringing up whatever that old fart did. Ah, you really don't have to do that. No, I insist, Raymond replied, his gaze was sharp as if he didn't take no as an answer. All right, then. Maki felt a strange flutter in her chest as she met his eyes, her cheeks flushing slightly as she nodded in gratitude. Huh? How come she gets a free meal and I don't, boss? A customer piped up, sounding a bit miffed. Raymond chuckled, shooting the customer a playful glance. Do you want to risk getting banned from the restaurant? The customer fell silent, exchanging glances with the others at the table. It seemed like complaining wasn't worth the risk of losing their precious dining spot. As Raymond returned to the kitchen counter, a smirk danced across his lips, hidden from the view of the others. Being in her hometown, she's probably feeling relaxed, he mused silently to himself. Raymond planned to take advantage of this and dig deeper into what Maki was doing here, her little group of friends, and their opinions on Meteor City. He understood that their presence could impact his plans for the city, and he needed to gather as much information as possible. On the flip side, Luke's cheerful expression gradually faded as he caught sight of Raymond's sly grin. He muttered to himself, never mind. I guess it's still chilly winter in his world. Having spent ample time with Raymond, Luke recognized that smirk all too well. Ah, typical Raymond, he sighed, shaking his head in a mix of amusement and exasperation. Redirecting his focus, he turned towards the pink-haired girl as he let out yet another sigh, poor little girl. As the daylight dimmed, marking the end of yet another day, it dawned on them that a whole week had flown by. But then... that old geezer's really outdone himself this time. He used his icy tricks to seal off his darn door. What's his deal anyway? Maki vented her frustration, recounting her latest encounter with Sakujiro. She had attempted to barge in, only to find the entrance frozen solid right before her eyes. Huh? Did he really do that? Seems like he's not a fan of yours, Nichin. Taka added, observing the situation. Raymond chuckled at the chaos. Ah, don't sweat it. You gave it your all. Who knows? Your persistence might just thaw his icy heart after a few more tries. Raymond's reassurance brought a glimmer of hope to Maki's eyes. Do you really think so? She asked eagerly. Despite her frequent outbursts and complaints, Raymond had remained patient and understanding. It was this warmth that had drawn Maki to him over the past week, making her feel oddly connected to him. Raymond nodded as they continued their conversation, though it was mostly Maki complaining, which made Taka feel slightly bored. Meanwhile, Sakujiro stared at the frozen door of his house, a sigh escaping his lips. Did I go too far? He mumbled to himself, his gaze shifting to a picture of Sarasa on the wall. Memories flooded his mind, and his chest felt heavy with regret. Seeing Maki reminded him of Sarasa, stirring up both painful memories he wished he could forget and cherished moments he didn't want to lose. Back then, Sarasa used to bring Maki over to play in this very place. Considering Sarasa's friend's persistent attempts to retrieve her belongings, Sakujiro assumed they would be just as determined this time. That little purse was the only thing I had left of her. I can't give it up, Sakujiro mumbled, his gaze distant as a wave of emotion washed over him. He sighed heavily, staring out the window as he tried to collect himself. Turning to the bread he had baked that day, a memory stirred within him. I haven't seen that annoying brat in a while, he muttered, standing up and taking a deep breath before taking a bite of the bread. The taste was as unpleasant as ever, prompting Sakujiro to add, I should go find out tomorrow. Chapter 89. The next day, Sajin made his way down the corridor of their base until he reached the end, where he paused in front of the door. He knocked a few times before hearing a deep, rough voice from inside. Come in. Slowly, Sajin pushed open the door, revealing an empty room with Watanabe seated at the center. His eyes were closed, and he sat in a lotus position, his breathing heavy. In front of him lay his sword, a solemn presence in the quiet room. Sajin waited patiently outside, feeling a bead of sweat trickle down his forehead under the mounting pressure. He couldn't help but wonder, did he finally pull it off? After what seemed like ages, Watanabe slowly opened his eyes, and the room was suddenly filled with an intense aura as his nen surged involuntarily. Sajin felt the pressure ease as Watanabe gradually released it, allowing him to breathe a sigh of relief. Turning to his loyal subordinate, Watanabe inquired, "What's the matter?" He knew Sajin wouldn't disturb him in the morning unless it was urgent. "Boss, that old man was spotted leaving his hideout and heading to that new restaurant on the outskirts of town." Sajin bowed respectfully as he delivered his report to Watanabe. Watanabe's brow furrowed as he mulled over the information. He remembered hearing about the restaurant that had become quite popular in the city. It had gained fame for offering affordable meals, almost like a charity. "I see," Watanabe responded, his expression growing more serious. The rise of this new restaurant had caught his attention, as it posed a potential threat to his group's interests. The new restaurant was becoming a popular spot for folks who usually relied on Watanabe's group for help, and this didn't sit well with them. Watanabe's mafia group had always been the ones who gave value to the coins circulating in the city. They'd accept them in exchange for goods, making them like real money in this tough town. Sure, they made a tidy profit trading these coins with clients from outside with real Jenny, but they also served as a kind of local bank, keeping the community afloat. But having another place to feed the needy wasn't part of their plan. They couldn't risk losing their grip on the desperate folks or giving them other options. If they let the restaurant keep doing what it was doing, Watanabe's mafia group would slowly lose their power and influence. Watanabe scratched his chin, deep in thought. "So, how much cash have we got stashed away?" "We're just shy of 500,000 Jenny from our target," Sajin reported. "Excellent," Watanabe's eyes gleamed with determination. "Looks like it's time to make our move, huh?" They were nearly there, just a stone's throw away from gathering enough funds to expand their influence beyond their current turf. "But first, I might be old, but I'm still healthy and kicking. Yet, I heard the elder's dying," Watanabe added with a smirk which earned a surprised nod from Sajin. "Congratulations, boss." Sajin couldn't contain his excitement. That meant Watanabe might have reached a breakthrough and was confident enough to take on the elders this time. Sajin's face turned serious. "Should we shut down that restaurant?" "No, that's not necessary. We're almost there anyway." Watanabe shook his head, a hint of amusement in his eyes. Their next deal should bring in enough cash to bridge the gap and reach their goal. He stood up as he chuckled. "Let's go give a warm welcome to these do-gooders who've been stealing our spotlight. I'm curious to meet them myself." Sajin nodded, trying to contain his excitement. Once they had enough funds, their next plan was to take over the city, which required them to kill the elders. With the money they'd gathered, they would expand their influence beyond its borders. "There's this group called the 10 Dons," Sajin thought about their longtime clients, knowing Watanabe was about to join them. But as Watanabe's loyal right-hand man, Sajin knew his boss wouldn't want to be under anyone else's thumb. So he grinned, which means we'll be taking down the 10 dons from the inside. Meanwhile, on the outskirts of the city, Sakujiro fell silent as he observed the bustling crowd gathered around the once abandoned building, now transformed into a restaurant. The sight left him baffled. He actually built a restaurant here? He must be crazy. He muttered to himself, watching people exit the restaurant, some patting their stomachs in satisfaction while others seemed regretful. Sigh. Sakujiro shook his head in disbelief as he approached the restaurant. Nichin, you didn't seem to be complaining today. What's up? Sakujiro recognized the childlike voice immediately and felt a wave of relief wash over him at the carefree tone. Despite finding the child annoying at times, Sakujiro harbored a fondness for him because of the way he reminded him of Sarasa. The roughness in his interactions with the child stemmed from his deep affection and complex emotions. Well, don't you ever get tired of hearing me complain? However, another familiar voice chimed in, causing Sakujiro to pause in his tracks. Actually, I do, but it's just unusual. You're brutally honest, as always. The other voice seemed at a loss for words in the face of the child's innocent candor, prompting a chuckle from the youngster. Sakujiro let out a sigh before he slowly pushed open the restaurant door, drawing everyone's attention. Taka spotted Sakujiro's face lighting up with excitement and dashed over, shouting with enthusiasm. Oh! Welcome, Grandpa Jiro. His small figure sprinted toward Sakujiro, whose expression softened at the sight of the innocent smile and eyes. Those voices and expressions were exactly like Sarasa's. But before the warmth could settle, Maki's angered voice shattered the moment. You old farts. How dare you come here after avoiding me like the plague? Her voice reverberated across the room as she hurled her plate at Sakujiro, who effortlessly sidestepped it. The wooden plate hit the wall with a loud thud, drawing the attention of everyone in the restaurant. Quite the warm welcome, wouldn't you say? Sakujiro's sarcasm was met with a stoic expression as he turned to Raymond, who was cooking nearby, and shook his head. Do you think sarcasm is funny? You old goof. Maki couldn't hold back her frustration, and a stream of profanity flowed from her mouth as she pointed accusingly at Sakujiro, who remained speechless. Taka observed the scene with interest until he felt someone behind him. He turned to see Luke approaching. You don't have to listen to this, Luke said, covering Taka's ears with his hands. Confused, Taka thought to himself, but I can still hear her, though. Chapter 90-. After some more shouting, Maki realized it was futile as the old man seemed to ignore her, which only fueled her frustration further. However, aware of their surroundings and the bustling restaurant, she forced herself to swallow her anger and sat back down. Grandpa! Come sit here! Taka exclaimed, guiding Sakujiro to a seat across from Maki. Sakujiro hesitated, scanning the crowded restaurant before sighing and resigning himself to the only available seat. Maki shot him an annoyed glare, but Sakujiro simply shook his head. Raymond approached with a plate of food, placing it in front of Sakujiro. Like I said before, consider this payment for those breads. Raymond stated before swiftly retreating to the back of the restaurant, likely to work on preparing the meat from Luke and the other's recent hunt. This looks better than I expected, Sakujiro muttered as he glanced over at the grilled pork meat in front of him. The aroma wafting from it caught him off guard. It smelled simply delicious. And the meat was expertly sliced, each piece perfect for popping into one's mouth, a sign of real care and skill. Humph. I guess you were easily impressed, old man, Maki grunted, her tone laced with annoyance as she observed Sakujiro seemingly captivated by the food. However, Sakujiro seemed unfazed, much to Maki's annoyance. Nevertheless, Maki's eyes suddenly sparkled with opportunity. This could be her chance to address her original reason for returning to Meteor City. She cleared her throat, preparing to speak, old man, now that you're here, I've got something important too. No. Sakujiro's abrupt interruption silenced Maki, igniting a fresh wave of fury within her. She rose sharply from her seat, pointing a trembling finger at Sakujiro, her anger palpable as she exclaimed, "You old geezer! You didn't even hear me out before shutting me down. You want to take what's left of her from me, don't you?" His words struck her like a bolt of lightning, rendering her speechless. Her anger dissipated, replaced by a complex mix of emotions as she realized the significance of what remained of Sarasa to Sakujiro. "Ah, darn it, this is so frustrating," she muttered under her breath as she settled back into her seat. Gathering her resolve, Maki turned to Sakujiro, intending to explain why she needed Sarasa's belonging. "Listen, we need to." "Huh? Who is that? Oh shit." Suddenly, a stir erupted among the crowd outside, catching the attention of both Sakujiro and Maki. They turned to see what the commotion was about. Whispers spread through the restaurant as the sound of footsteps grew louder, signaling someone's approaching. Maki shot an annoyed glance in the direction of the disturbance, feeling frustrated that her conversation had been interrupted at such a crucial moment. Meanwhile, Sakujiro's expression turned wary as he recognized the familiar presence approaching the restaurant's entrance. His gaze sharpened, focusing intently on the door. "Hey, not bad for a small place like this," a deep voice commented from the doorway. "Indeed, boss, quite a surprise," another voice chimed in. Maki's frown deepened as she sensed the tension in the air. She turned over to Sakujiro, who was looking toward the door with intense bloodlust radiating from his figure. Sensing the sudden tension, Luke shielded Taka from the mounting pressure, while his men grew tense as their eyes were fixed on the slowly opening door. "Why is it so quiet in here?" A voice, tinged with amusement, echoed through the restaurant as Watanabe strolled in, his sword casually at his side. Beside him, Sajin stood, his presence intimidating as he surveyed the room with caution, his gaze finally settling on Sakujiro, his eyes brimming with hostility. "Hey, Jiro. Didn't expect to find you here. How's the bakery business treating you?" Watanabe's tone was casual, as if they were old pals catching up. Sakujiro grunted in dissatisfaction, "Don't talk to me like that. It's unpleasant." "You." Sajin's nen flared up, his aura honing in on Sakujiro as if he was about to strike. But Watanabe raised his hand, causing Sajin to withdraw his aura. He glanced around at the tense atmosphere in the room. "Consider yourself lucky." The pressure in the room made the customers freeze in place, unable to move. Clap. "All right, folks. Let's pick up the pace and finish those plates faster now that we've got a special guest." Luke's calm clap seemed to break the spell, and the previously paralyzed customers hurriedly finished their meals and dashed out of the restaurant. Watanabe observed the scene silently, then turned to Luke with a smile. "Oh. You must be the leader here." Sajin also glanced at Luke, impressed by how easily he snapped everyone back to reality. Still, there was a hint of wariness within his eyes as he locked his eyes on Luke. Luke was about to deny that, but before he could. "Fucking old fart. Why in the world are you barging in like this?" Maki erupted in a loud outburst. Her sudden outburst caught everyone's attention, but they quickly decided to ignore her theatrics. "Hey, kid, better leave now," Luke said to Taka, whom he had shielded earlier from the confrontation. "But just go. I'll make sure Raymond cooks up something special for you and your brother later," Luke assured him. Though reluctant to leave the commotion behind, Taka trusted Luke's judgment and reluctantly nodded, "Okay, but you better keep your promise." With that, Taka made his exit, leaving the adults to sort out their issues. "Son of a bitch, that's why I hate people like you." Still, Maki's outburst didn't seem to die down yet. "Ah, geez, here we go again," Luke muttered under his breath as Maki's tirade continued without showing any signs of slowing down. He couldn't help but shake his head in exasperation. Watanabe shot Sakujiro a feigned look of disappointment, shaking his head slowly. "Jiro, that's a bit harsh, don't you think?" But Sakujiro wasn't having it. His anger simmered beneath the surface as he glared at Watanabe. "You've wiped out my crew, my family, and now you're playing innocent? Must be losing your mind," he spat, his nen crackling with energy, filling the room with tension. Watanabe just smirked, unfazed. "You misunderstand, Jiro. You know they came after us first. We had to defend ourselves," he retorted, his own aura flaring up in response to Sakujiro's. "Don't ignore me." Maki's voice rang out amidst the tension, adding another layer to the clash of energies in the room. Chapter 91 - How dare you? Sakujiro gritted his teeth in anger as his eyes venomously stared at Watanabe, who kept his smile. Back then, he was desperately looking for Sarasa's trace anywhere as he ventured deep into the forest, and by the time he went back, he had not received any results. Those scums took advantage of this and threw discord among his men, which in turn made them aggressively come at Watanabe's group and eradicate them. By the time he came to know of this fact, it was already too late, as he could only watch helplessly as the last of his men on his last breath before dying a meaningless death. "Kek, you used to be calculated and cold. What happened to your past self?" Watanabe chuckled, which forcibly raised the tension. Had it not been for the discovery of Sarasa's remains, he might have been consumed by thoughts of revenge against Watanabe's group. This grim revelation shattered Sakujiro's resolve, leaving him engulfed in grief and despair. Faced with the sight of Sarasa's mutilated body, the weight of his loss crushed him. She had been more than just his daughter, she was his beacon of hope in the darkness of their world. To see her reduced to such a state filled him with an unbearable sorrow that threatened to consume him entirely. As Sakujiro gazed upon the lifeless form of the girl he had cherished, his heart ached with pain unlike any he had ever known. "Eh? Can we bake it ourselves? Then, let's make a bread every day." The sight of the darkened bread on her side only served to deepen his anguish as her innocent words reverberated across his mind. Unable to contain his grief any longer, Sakujiro collapsed to his knees, clutching the bread tightly as tears streamed down his face. At that moment, he felt as though he had lost not only his family but also a part of himself. The pain of his loss was a wound that would never fully heal, leaving him broken and adrift in a world that had become devoid of meaning. Yet, despite his overwhelming grief and emptiness, Sakujiro clung to the one thing that kept him going. His daughter dreams of baking the bread every single day. But as he stood face to face with the one responsible for the deaths of his men, a surge of anger ignited within him. The air around Sakujiro grew colder, a chilling manifestation of his rage. Ice began to form around him, a physical representation of the intense fury consuming him. But as Sakujiro prepared to confront his enemy, he sensed a subtle shift in the atmosphere. "Oh please, I don't want to destroy the place yet." Watanabe's nen expanded like a domain, enveloping the whole area with his nen, which seemed to contain and suppress Sakujiro's wrath. Despite his burning desire for vengeance, Sakujiro was shocked by this. This old man is dangerous. Luke's thoughts raced, beads of sweat trickling down his back as he eyed Watanabe with a grave expression. Maki clicked her tongue in frustration, feeling ignored by the others as she quietly seethed. Yet, her attention snapped back to Watanabe, her eyes narrowing with a sense of foreboding. "He could pose a real threat to my life. He felt totally different than the last time I confronted him," Sakujiro thought silently in seriousness. A dagger made of ice slowly formed in his hand as he clenched it tightly. His eyes were sharp as an intense bloodlust immediately filled the restaurant. What in the world? The intensity of the bloodlust took Sajin by surprise, causing sweat to bead on his forehead as he looked on in disbelief. For years, Sajin had kept his watch on Sakujiro even when the old fart was isolating himself. He recalled the old fart seemed to have only interacted with desperate souls seeking solace in his bread when all other options failed. "And I'm still out of his league," Sajin muttered, frustration evident in his clenched fists. The old fart's enduring strength and ferocity were beyond belief. Yet, amidst the tension, a glimmer of relief washed over his being. Sajin turned to Watanabe, whose nen was overpowering the rest. His expression filled with reverence. "Thankfully, our boss made a breakthrough." Sajin could clearly feel the intensity was totally on a new level. However, the sudden tension in the restaurant intensified as another heavy aura descended upon them, causing everyone to widen their eyes in surprise. "Fucking noisy." All heads turned towards the back door, where Raymond emerged, his presence ominous. Blood stained his apron and splattered his face, his kitchen knife gleaming menacingly in his hand. His crimson eyes glowed menacingly at them. Luke scratched his head nervously, realizing their mistake. "Ah, crap. We shouldn't have disturbed him while he was butchering the meat." With bloodied hands and a chilling aura, Raymond stood before them. Luke and the others felt a knot forming in their throats as they observed Raymond's crimson eyes, fully aware that he was genuinely upset. Watanabe's demeanor shifted as he took in the intensity of Raymond's gaze. He couldn't help but feel a chill run down his spine. Is this young man in charge here? Watanabe's smile faltered slightly as he gauged Luke's reaction, recognizing the impressive display of nen pressure emanating from Raymond. "His nen is quite impressive for someone so young," Watanabe remarked, quickly regaining his composure. However, he couldn't help but notice something else, that chaotic aura surrounding him. Understanding dawned on Watanabe's face as he retracted his nen, offering Raymond an apologetic smile. "My apologies, young man. I simply wanted to taste your cooking, but it seems this gentleman over here took issue with it." Sakujiro immediately felt the weight of Raymond's intense gaze locking on him, prompting him to click his tongue and instinctively retract his aura. "Don't make another noise, or you can say goodbye to a good food." Raymond's voice retained its icy tone, his aura seemingly intensifying with each word. "Cooking's crucial, but prepping the meat, that's where the magic happens." A hush fell over the restaurant as they truly couldn't understand what Raymond was talking about. On the other hand, witnessing this new side of him, Maki couldn't help but marvel. Who knew he was so serious about cooking? "Don't push your luck," Raymond warned, his aura diminishing as he retreated to the kitchen, leaving the restaurant in an awkward silence. Chapter 92 After Raymond left them, Watanabe's gaze lingered on the door silently, with his mind racing. He then shifted his attention to Luke, who met his gaze with cautious wariness. "This blonde guy is not bad, and his crew," Watanabe mused quietly, sizing up Raymond's team. "Seems they've got some skills under their belt as well." Sharing a silent understanding with Watanabe, Sajin joined him at a nearby table. Across from them, Sakujiro and Maki maintained their glare, their animosity palpable in the air. After a while, Raymond emerged from the back room with trays of freshly prepared meat. He glanced over at Watanabe and Sajin, acknowledging their presence. "2 servings, right?" "Yes, please," Watanabe replied with a nod. "All right, just give me a moment," Raymond said as he got to work. The sizzling sounds of meat cooking filled the air, accompanied by the mouth-watering aroma that soon enveloped the room. Watanabe raised an eyebrow in anticipation, while Sajin couldn't help but drool in response. "All right, enjoy your meal. Please take note that you can only have 1 serving per day." "Understood." Before long, plates of succulent grilled pork were placed before them, accompanied by wooden chopsticks. As they took their first bites, their eyes widened in surprise at the burst of flavor. They glanced over at Raymond in astonishment, who had returned to the kitchen counter, seemingly didn't care much about their reaction. Without hesitation, they dug into their meals, savoring every bite. "Ah, I could eat that all day," Sajin sighed, eyeing his empty plate wistfully. But Watanabe had other plans. He rose from his seat and motioned for Sajin to follow. "Time to go," he said briskly. Sajin scrambled to his feet, caught off guard by the sudden departure. As they prepared to leave, Watanabe turned to Raymond with a smile. "That was an exceptional meal, young man. I hope you stick around." Raymond nodded in response. "I'll do my best," he said softly. With that, Watanabe and Sajin exited the restaurant, leaving behind a tense atmosphere. Sakujiro clenched his fists in anger, his emotions simmering beneath the surface. Finally, that nuisance left, Maki grumbled, her irritation palpable as she shot a glare at Sakujiro. "Like I said, old man, this time." "But I'm leaving," he announced, his tone heavy with resignation. Before she could finish her sentence, Sakujiro abruptly stood up, cutting her off. "Hey, wait till I finish my words," Maki protested, rising from her seat. But Sakujiro was already gone, disappearing in a blur before anyone could react. Maki cursed under her breath and attempted to chase after him, but she stumbled and fell to the floor. The room fell silent, everyone staring at Maki in surprise. "You motherfucker." Flustered and embarrassed, Maki glanced down at her frozen shoes, cursing Sakujiro under her breath once more. Meanwhile, as Watanabe and Sajin made their way back to their base, a heavy silence hung between them. Watanabe's gaze was icy, his expression unreadable as he muttered, "Those guys. They're outsiders." Sajin was walking beside him as he responded solemnly. There was a heavy pause before Watanabe spoke again, his voice tinged with coldness. "I think it's only right for us to consider them our enemy." "That should be the case." Sajin nodded in agreement, understanding the gravity of the situation. Although Watanabe harbored doubts about Sakujiro's involvement with outsiders, the presence of formidable individuals in such a desolate place was unsettling. With their plans on the horizon, Watanabe couldn't shake off his apprehension. "That young man's nen is unstable, but he smells strong." Watanabe's thoughts were filled with the memory of the intense pressure he had sensed earlier. Recalling Luke and his companions in the restaurant, Watanabe continued his musings, and beside the young man, those individuals are not to be underestimated, especially the blonde guy. Confident in his ability to handle Sakujiro should he choose to align with the elders, Watanabe was nevertheless wary of Raymond and his cohorts. Their collective strength posed a significant threat, and Watanabe knew he had to proceed with caution, devising a strategy to eliminate them one by one. The consequences of facing them head-on could prove dire, even life-threatening. Yet, launching a direct assault on Sakujiro would inevitably draw the attention of the elders, complicating matters further. As these considerations swirled in his mind, a cold glint sparked in Watanabe's eyes, infused with a calculated cunning. "If an offensive approach is too risky," he murmured to himself, "then perhaps a defensive strategy is warranted." In a hidden corner of the Meteor City, a small but lone figure, clad in tattered garments that barely shielded him from the biting cold, stood beneath the moon's luminous gaze. His face obscured by a mouthpiece as he remained silent, lost in contemplation. "The winds of change are upon us." Suddenly, a weary voice broke the silence, resonating through the stillness of the night. The figure turned to behold a chubby elderly man, his round face marked by the wear of time, a jewel adorning his forehead. Together, they gazed up at the moon, a silent understanding passing between them. "Will you not step in this time?" The weary voice of the elder broke the heavy silence, laden with concern. In response, a solemn sigh escaped the lips of the other elder. "My time draws near. Whatever may come, must come." "He is your blood, is he not?" "He possesses strength," came the steadfast reply. A faint smile graced the chubby elder's lips, his gaze returning to the moon. A glimmer of emotion softened his weary eyes. Do not fret. Silent understanding passed between them, despite the lack of words. The concern for his own blood's safety weighed heavily on his minds, even if the short elder didn't openly express it. As the chubby elder's eyes flickered with a brief spark of light before it was quickly dimmed. This time, he began, his voice tinged with sadness, it may offer him the opportunity to find solace. The burdens that child carries. They are heavy indeed. The path ahead had been revealed by fate, but he who saw it couldn't intervene as he was bound by the dictates of destiny itself. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but it heralded the arrival of something better, a new beginning that promised prosperity in this forsaken place. What may happen, should happen. The words hung heavy in the air, accompanied by a weary sigh that seemed to echo through the night. As clouds drifted to obscure the moon, darkness descended upon the city. Chapter 93 A few days later, Sakujiro continued his daily routine, kneading dough for bread like any other day. The smell of baking bread filled his small bakery, offering a sense of normalcy amidst the chaos outside. But as he prepared to put the dough in the oven, he noticed he was running low on firewood. Sakujiro couldn't help but furrowed his eyebrows at this. He then shook his head as he grabbed a pickaxe and headed outside. All right, I suppose it's about time I get some woods. With a sigh, Sakujiro accepted the task ahead, knowing that even in tough times, there were chores that couldn't be delayed. As he trudged through the dusty streets, Sakujiro couldn't help but notice the bustling activity around him. People roamed the streets, their voices mixing with each other. But amidst the noise, something caught Sakujiro's attention. Did you hear? Our boss seems to be speeding up our inventory list. Yeah, and it's always us who have to do the legwork, finding goods wherever we can. What about that blind kid a few blocks away? Should we add him to the list? He paused, his senses heightened, as he eavesdropped on a conversation. Two figures spoke in hushed tones, hidden in the shadows of the alley. Sakujiro's figure blurred away as he cut off his presence. He was intent on listening to their conversation. The words he overheard unsettled Sakujiro, especially the mention of the blind child. Blind kid? He murmured to himself, his thoughts drifting to the annoying brat he knew all too well, whose brother struggled with failing eyesight. Who cares, just add him to the list, one of the figures said with a weary sigh. He's probably not going to make it very far in such a horrible environment. It would be more prudent to sell him to those individuals so he may potentially contribute in some way. All right, then. Exclamation mark. The chilling words sent a shiver down Sakujiro's spine, causing him to drop his pickaxe in shock. The sound immediately setting off the alarm bells for those two suspicious characters. Who's there? Their voices echoed through the stillness, but a sudden chill filled the air, freezing their words in their throats. The sunlight, normally warm and comforting, seemed to lose its power as an icy coldness descended upon them. Shit. What's happening? This wasn't part of the script. One of the men panicked, his breath misting in the frigid air. But before they could react, Sakujiro materialized before them, his presence like a specter in the cold. Fuck, attack. With lightning speed, they launched themselves at him, but their assault was abruptly halted. Sakujiro's fingers barely touched their chests, yet a numbing coldness spread through their bodies, freezing them in place from head to toe. Do you even know what you're doing? The words rang out in fear, trembling with uncertainty as the coldness seeped into the very core of his being. But Sakujiro's gaze remained unyielding, his eyes reflecting the icy atmosphere around them as he spoke in a low, chilling tone. Tell me every detail of your discussion earlier, and perhaps I'll consider sparing your lives. The realization dawned on both of them, their faces draining of color as they gazed into Sakujiro's emotionless expression, filled only with dread. These two individuals stubbornly resisted revealing any information, until the gravity of Sakujiro's threat sank in. In Meteor City, killing was frowned upon unless it was a matter of self-defense. And Sakujiro being serious about killing them was shocking to them. Realizing the dire consequences of their silence, they relented and spilled the details of Watanabe's involvement in human trafficking. While Watanabe didn't break the unwritten rules directly, he turned a blind eye to the illicit activities of outsiders. The revelation struck a chord with Sakujiro, especially the mention of Sin, a helpless child. Memories flooded back, fueling his anger. Sarasa was also kidnapped. With a tightening grip on the two individuals, Sakujiro's nen surged, crushing one of them in a display of his wrath. Arg! A gut-wrenching scream pierced the air as the man writhed in agony, his lower half shattered, succumbing to the relentless pain until his cries faded into silence with his final breath. You said you wouldn't kill us. The remaining man struggled in vain against the icy grip, but Sakujiro's hand pressed down upon him, crushing his hopes with chilling words. I did, didn't I? But who said I promised you anything? Another agonized wail echoed through the alley, drawing the attention of bystanders who hurried toward the scene. As the bystanders drew near, Sakujiro melted into the darkness, leaving behind only whispers of unease. God damn it! Someone's been killed. Is it Sakujiro? That old man and his ice. Something's not right here. Apprehension rippled through the crowd as they gathered around the icy corpses, their features contorted in fear and disbelief. Sakujiro streaked through the city, his eyes burning with rage as he pieced together the truth behind the rampant human trafficking plaguing their streets. But it wasn't just the trafficking that fueled his fury. The perpetrator responsible had also spilled the blood of his comrades. And his daughter. The realization struck him like a thunderbolt, igniting a wildfire of vengeance within him. That bastard. Nen surged chaotically through his veins, encasing half of his body in icy armor. But mere retribution wouldn't suffice for the lives lost, for the innocence stolen. In his grip, a dagger materialized, its edge gleaming with lethal intent. With eyes as cold as steel, he vowed, he will suffer a slow and agonizing demise. He will pay dearly for his sins. On the other side of the city. As Watanabe sensed the formidable presence approaching, he opened his eyes, the air crackling with anticipation. His base lay eerily empty, devoid of his usual cohorts. He's on his way, Watanabe muttered to himself, a smirk playing on his lips. With swift precision, he drew his sword, the steel gleaming in the dim light. Let's see if you're still worthy of my attention, Jiro. Chapter 94 - Watanabe. Pay for your sins. Sakujiro's form streaked across the sky like a meteor as his vengeance fueled his whole being. Boom. His figure hurtled toward Watanabe's base as a deafening roar reverberated through the city. The structure crumbled under the impact, reduced to a mere shadow of its former self amid the billowing dust. As the dust settled, Sakujiro emerged from the chaos, encased in ice and wielding a lethal dagger forged with his hatsu. Frost crept along the ground at his feet, a testament to his chilling presence. Across the rubble-strewn landscape, Watanabe stood firm, his grin undeterred by the destruction and the chilling temperature. It'll be a hassle to fix all this, Watanabe sighed, shaking his head. He turned to Sakujiro with a taunting smile. Couldn't you have been more civil, Jiro? Shut your mouth. Why don't you shut it then? Sakujiro's chilling voice echoed through the air, but Watanabe merely smirked in response. You motherfucker. Sakujiro's eyes narrowed into icy slits as he launched himself forward, his form a blur of motion as he closed the distance with alarming speed. The air crackled with intensity as his dagger, guided by his burning desire for vengeance, sliced through the air with deadly precision and aimed directly at Watanabe's heart. However, it wasn't enough to touch him as Watanabe's agility saved him. Ha ha ha. That's it. Show me more. He swiftly dodged Sakujiro's incoming attack as he laughed heartily. With a quick sidestep, he narrowly evaded the blow, but his surprise was evident when he saw Sakujiro's weapon morph before his eyes. The ice dagger extended, its form elongating into a sword as Sakujiro's nen surged fiercely into it, visibly transforming before Watanabe's startled gaze. Reacting quickly, Watanabe retreated, putting some distance between himself and the now threatening sword-wielding Sakujiro. Yet, Sakujiro's onslaught persisted. With a deafening impact, the sword crashed into the ground, sending a wave of freezing energy hurtling toward Watanabe. Ha 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 ha. You think that will be enough? Watanabe's laughter echoed, a display of his unwavering confidence. Gripping his sword tightly, he prepared for the imminent confrontation. Come at me with all you've got. It'll take more than that to defeat me. With a burst of energy, he swung his sword, meeting Sakujiro's freezing wave head-on. The clash sent shockwaves rippling through the air, creating a deafening boom that echoed in the surroundings. As dust filled the air, obscuring their vision, both fighters stood their ground as the dust slowly settled down. On the other side of the battlefield. ! Sajin stood at a safe distance, his eyes wide as he watched the devastating clash between Sakujiro and Watanabe unfold. The sheer power unleashed by their battle sent a shiver down his spine, and he couldn't help but swallow nervously. Their base lay in ruins, a testament to the ferocity of their confrontation. They were expecting this at some point, which was why they had evacuated beforehand to give Watanabe the space to face Sakujiro alone. However, the intense clash between Sakujiro and Watanabe still left everyone in shock. Their faces filled with fear and disbelief as they took in the destruction around them. I never imagined that old guy had that much strength in him. Those fools who went to share the news with the old man should be dead by now. Considering the old man's angered expression, probably yeah. Sakujiro's unexpected strength had caught them off guard, and whispers of amazement and fear circulated among the onlookers. Sajin, too, was stunned by the spectacle before him, watching in awe as the dust settled to reveal the two fighters standing amidst the chaos. "Do we go as planned?" One of his subordinates approached, questioning their next move. "Stick to the plan. Send one team to the old man's hideout and another to the new restaurant." Sajin nodded, his expression grim as he issued orders. His voice turned cold as he addressed the rest of the group. "The rest of you, stay here and intercept anyone who dares to approach the battlefield. No mercy." Back on the battlefield. Despite the chaos, both Sakujiro and Watanabe stood firm as they looked at each other in silence. Why would you go that far?" Sakujiro's voice trembled with emotion, his eyes reflecting the pain of loss and betrayal as memories of his fallen comrades flooded his mind. The dusty battlefield seemed to echo with their final moments, each breath stirring the lingering scent of blood and sorrow. In response, Watanabe shook his head, his expression hardened with resolve. "Two tigers cannot share the same mountain," he declared. Sakujiro's gaze bore into Watanabe, a mixture of emotions flickering across his face like shadows dancing in the firelight. A deep sigh escaped his lips, heavy with the weight of his memories and the burden of his grief. But then, a sudden surge of anger transformed his features, twisting them into a mask of fury. In his mind's eye, he saw the innocent face of a little girl, Sarasa, her laughter echoing like distant bells. Blood-red tears welled up in his eyes, trailing down his cheeks like crimson rivers. "Why?" he demanded, his voice raw with emotion. "I can understand your vendetta against me, but why involve Sarasa? What did she ever do to deserve this?" A heavy silence settled between them, broken only by the soft rustle of the wind and the distant echoes of their earlier clash. Watanabe racked his mind, trying to make sense of the situation. He had never put Sarasa's name on the list in his past trades. He could understand the pain of losing comrades, but the loss of a beloved daughter figure was something he couldn't fully grasp. As he watched, the anguish etched upon Sakujiro's features. "I might not be able to understand how you felt losing your daughter." Watanabe's voice remained steady, his gaze unwavering as he observed Sakujiro's tear-streaked face. "I don't know what kept you going, but it was thanks to her that I could force you to live in isolation, feeling depressed." The words cut through the air, devoid of sympathy or regret. Watanabe's expression remained stoic, his eyes sharp and calculating. If Jiro had decided to enact his vengeance upon his group, Watanabe continued silently in his mind, "I knew it would take longer to recover from the aftermath." Thankfully, Sarasa's body was found right after. And the discovery shattered Sakujiro's resolve, leaving him a mere shell of his former self. Still, Sarasa's unfortunate accident had unwittingly played into Watanabe's hands, allowing him to isolate Sakujiro to fight him one-on-one. With a dismissive shake of his head, Watanabe remarked, "She's just an unlucky child." There was no softening in his demeanor, no hint of remorse in his words. Only the cold reality of their situation hung between them. Chapter 95 A while ago at Dumpster Delights. "Hee, look at you, always busy. Why not take a break and join us for a bite?" teased an older man, his tone light and teasing. "Shut it, old-timer. I'm good with my meat routine," Taka retorted, his annoyance evident as he balanced a stack of dirty plates. He shot the old man with an annoyed look as he grumbled, "Unlike you, I eat that meat twice a day." "Hold up, you eat twice a day?" Someone chimed in, and the surprise was evident in their voice. "Yep, you got that right," Taka replied proudly, lifting his head with a hint of arrogance. Raymond couldn't help but sigh as the commotion drew his attention. "Wait a minute, owner, you said 1 meal per day for everyone, what gives?" Someone exclaimed, their tone accusatory. "Yeah, that's what you said. Are you trying to pull a fast one on us?" Another chimed in, their skepticism clear. Raymond remained calm as he responded, "I never lied. For any customers, you can indeed only order once per day." He continued slicing meat with ease, placing the finished plate on the counter for Taka to serve. "Then, are you saying the kid is lying?" someone asked, shooting a pointed look at Taka. "I'm not a liar," Taka protested, raising his hand indignantly. "Hey, it's okay to lie a bit, kid. No harm done," another regular chuckled, trying to lighten the mood. "I said I'm not lying." Taka huffed in annoyance, stomping to the back of the restaurant to deposit the dirty plates. Raymond chuckled softly and shook his head, "The kid's not lying, though." "Huh? What do you mean by that, owner?" "Just as the kid's saying, he gets to eat twice a day because he works for me," Raymond continued with a small smile on his face. "He still gets his salary, so consider those extra meals as a bonus for taking care of all of you." Sigh. "Now that you put it that way. Well, we can't really argue with that logic, can we?" Then, someone raised their hand, speaking up, "Anyway, owner, are you looking for another waiter? He's still a kid, why not choose someone like me?" All eyes turned expectantly toward Raymond, including Taka, who watched anxiously. He was hoping Raymond wouldn't replace him. "Please, no," Taka silently prayed. Observing their hopeful faces and Taka's worried expression, Raymond couldn't help but chuckle. "Not anytime soon." "Eh? Why? That's unlucky." Everyone was disappointed as they grumbled. They couldn't help but look at Taka jealously, who beamed with relief. Exclamation mark. Raymond shook his head and resumed his cooking, unfazed by the commotion. Suddenly, a deafening boom reverberated through the city, startling everyone. "Whoa! What was that?" The whole ground just shook. Nervous murmurs filled the restaurant as patrons exchanged worried glances. Raymond's expression grew serious as he sensed the disturbance in the city. Setting aside his chopsticks, he swiftly turned off the stove and made his way to the door. Surveying the area, Raymond's attention fixated on a distant part of the city. The air crackled with tension, indicating a significant conflict unfolding there. Raymond's expression twisted in confusion as he tried to make sense of the sudden chaos enveloping the city. What is going on? He had a basic grasp of the power dynamics in Meteor City. There used to be 3 major forces in the city. Sakujiro was once one of them. After all, he was once a local mafia boss. Unfortunately, his group was annihilated, leaving only 2 forces left. Watanabe and his crew, who were a powerful force within the city, and the mysterious elders, whose influence remained shrouded in mystery. Raymond didn't have a clue how Watanabe had managed to annihilate Sakujiro's men yet spared his life. As for the elders, he knew they stood as guardians over Meteor City's inhabitants. However, because of their old age, even though they wielded formidable power, they intervened only when the city faced imminent peril. For the most part, they remained aloof, preferring to observe rather than intervene in the day-to-day affairs of the city. Their motives and numbers remained a mystery, known only to a select few. But when their presence was felt, it was a signal that the city faced a threat too dire to ignore. As Raymond pondered the intense collisions and pressures he sensed from a distance, a chilling realization dawned on him. Could it be Watanabe crossing swords with the elders? He murmured to himself. Recalling his encounter with the old man, Raymond detected a hidden ambition beneath Watanabe's seemingly jovial demeanor. Being a man of ambition himself, Raymond understood the desire for power all too well. That man wants everything, he concluded, his eyes gleaming with understanding. Still, as he pondered these puzzling developments, Raymond felt a sense of urgency creeping in. Though the situation remained shrouded in uncertainty, Raymond couldn't shake the feeling that he needed to act, to uncover the truth. Trusting his instincts, Raymond made a decisive choice. I'm shutting down the restaurant. I have to go check that out. Seriously? Right now? His customers protested, their voices filled with disbelief. But Raymond's unwavering gaze left no room for argument. Will you open again later? One of his customers, still hungry and disappointed, ventured to ask. I'm not sure. Raymond hesitated for a moment, uncertainty flickering in his eyes. But looking at their expression, he added, but if it turns out to be nothing serious and I return soon, maybe I'll reopen. His words sparked a wave of relief among them who hadn't even had a chance to get their meals. With nods of understanding, they exited the restaurant, leaving Raymond to his urgent task. Should I wait here, Niki? Taka inquired, tilting his head with a puzzled expression. Raymond shook his head firmly, no need. Go back to your place. I'll call you if I need to reopen the restaurant. Got it. Take care. Taka replied, flashing a smile as he dashed off to his own place, eager to spend time with Sin. Back with Sakujiro and Watanabe. I see. Sakujiro's response was devoid of emotion, his blood tears ceasing. Watanabe tensed, sensing a surge in pressure, and released his nen to match. Boom. Without a word, they blurred into motion, a deafening boom echoing as a shockwave rippled through the area. Watanabe's men retreated as a cloud of dust billowed out, obscuring the fighters. Yet, within the chaos, the clash of these two monsters persisted, the battle raging on. Chapter 96 was an author's note. Chapter 97 — Huh? That old man wasn't home? Maki's voice echoed through the empty room as she stepped inside Sakujiro's place. She scanned the surroundings, hoping to catch a glimpse of him. She sighed softly, disappointment creeping into her expression. Seems like he wasn't here. Now that I think about it. Her tone shifted, a mischievous smirk playing on her lips. Does that mean I can steal Sarasa's belongings? Excitement surged within her at the prospect of completing her long-awaited mission. Maki's eyes darted around the room, as she immediately went around to find Sarasa's heart-shaped purse. Maki found herself standing alone in the silent kitchen, the smell of freshly baked bread wafting through the air. She glanced over at the simple clay oven, its presence a familiar fixture in the room. "He's still making that awful bread," she muttered under her breath, a hint of annoyance in her tone. Despite her initial disdain, Maki's curiosity got the better of her as she noticed several loaves of the bread laid out on the table. With a mix of reluctance and intrigue, she picked up a piece and took a cautious bite. The taste was just as unpalatable as she remembered, and she couldn't hide her grimace of distaste. "It's still as bad as ever." Maki shook her head in disappointment, but for some reason, she found herself unable to stop eating until the entire loaf was gone. With each bite, memories flooded back, Sarasa's infectious laughter, the warmth of their friendship. Maki's expression softened as she felt both nostalgic and sadness. As she finished the last bite, she cast a wistful glance at the remaining bread. "All right, get back to work," Maki muttered to herself, shaking her head as she resumed her search of Sakujiro's place. As she rummaged through the sparse belongings, her eyes fell upon a chest tucked away in the corner. With a sigh of relief, she retrieved the heart-shaped pouch she had been searching for. "There you are," she whispered softly, her fingers brushing against the smooth surface. "Time to go," Maki declared, but as she turned to leave, something caught her eye, a framed picture on the wall. Exclamation mark. She froze in her tracks, her gaze fixed on the image of Sarasa, her heart sinking at the sight. Silence enveloped Maki as she stood before the picture, her emotions swirling within her. Slowly, she reached out, her finger tracing the outline of Sarasa's smiling face. "That old man must have been suffering alone," Maki muttered softly. Staring at the picture on the wall, she couldn't shake the image of Sakujiro toiling away in the kitchen night after night, baking bread in solitude. And with Sarasa's picture hanging on the wall. It was a kind of torment, a constant reminder of his pain and loss. Most people would have crumbled under such circumstances, but Sakujiro endured even though he was dying on the inside. Though Maki didn't share a close bond with him, she couldn't help but empathize with his struggle. After all, she, too, had felt the sting of grief since Sarasa's passing. Letting out a deep sigh, Maki shifted her gaze to the kitchen. "Baking bread is what kept you going, isn't it, old man?" However, a deafening boom reverberated through the city, startling her as she looked around confusedly. "What's going on?" she muttered, her voice tinged with confusion. Before she could venture outside to investigate, Maki's instincts kicked in, and she detected an ominous presence drawing closer. With quick thinking, she concealed her presence, blending seamlessly into the shadows. As the approaching figures drew near, their hushed conversation reached Maki's ears, sending a chill down her spine. "The commotion's getting too loud. We gotta move quickly. Spread the pine needles around. That guy's got an oven. We'll light it up." The unsettling words fueled Maki's growing sense of anger. They want to set this place on fire? This place held memories of Sarasa, and the thought of it being destroyed ignited a fiery anger within her. Anger boiled within her as she stepped out to meet these people outside. They were unlike the usual riffraff that roamed the city streets, and considering their coordinated presence here, they were not your average bums. As Maki's eyes gleamed with a dangerous bloodlust, she couldn't shake the memory of the irksome old man she had encountered at Dumpster Delights a few days prior. They must be his lackeys. The sudden appearance of Maki caught the group off guard, their initial shock quickly turning into panic. "Damn it! We've got company!" The leader barked out orders, his voice filled with urgency. "Take her down. Knock her out." With determination in their eyes, the group moved as one, closing in on Maki with hostile intent. Yet, Maki remained composed in the face of their aggression, her demeanor unwavering as she muttered to herself, "This could be considered self-defense, right?" As one man charged at Maki from the front, two others flanked her from the sides. Maki remained calm, channeling her nen into her palms. With lightning reflexes, she leaped over the man in front of her, swiftly placing her hand on his head and using him as a springboard to propel herself forward. Shit! She can fight. The two attackers hesitated, unsure of how to proceed. Before they could react, the man who had lunged at Maki earlier drew a knife and swiftly stabbed the attacker on her right. "Look out!" "Huh? What's going on?" Confusion filled the air as the stabbed man stumbled back, unable to comprehend the sudden turn of events. "I don't know. My body just moved on its own," stammered the leader, his face drained of color as fear gripped him. In a sudden and shocking turn of events, he swiftly slit his subordinate's throat, leaving the man to collapse in confusion. The last remaining assailant paled in terror, attempting to flee, only to find himself frozen in place. Exclamation mark. With dread sinking in, he turned to see Maki standing behind him, holding him immobile with a chilling gaze. "No, no. Please, I don't want to die." The plea was abruptly silenced as the leader thrust his knife into the man's chest, blood gushing from his mouth as he stared in disbelief before succumbing to darkness. "You! What are you?" The leader gasped, his voice trembling with fear, hand inching toward his neck as he begged for mercy. "Plea." But before he could finish his plea, another lifeless body fell to the ground with a heavy thud. Maki stood amidst the scene, her expression unreadable as she surveyed the aftermath in chilling silence. "They killed each other. I didn't do anything," she murmured softly with a cold expression. Chapter 98-. Clang. The clash of metal reverberated through the air as Watanabe's sword met Sakujiro's ice dagger with a resounding clang. With each strike, the battlefield transformed, the ground shifting and warping under the force of their relentless battle. As their weapons clashed yet another time. Exclamation mark. Sakujiro's heart raced as he watched his ice dagger being overpowered by the sheer force of Watanabe's sword, its blade shimmering with nen. In a split-second decision, he released his grip on the dagger, allowing it to tumble to the ground as he swiftly ducked beneath Watanabe's line of sight. In that brief moment, the air crackled with tension. Sakujiro's muscles tensed as he prepared for his next move. Then, with a fluid motion, he swung his arm sharply as another ice dagger slowly materialized into his hand with a surge of his nen. Meanwhile, Watanabe stood firm, his eyes locked on Sakujiro's every move. His sword gleamed in the sunlight, its edge honed to perfection. "Oh? Your reaction speed seemed to be still kicking." With a smirk playing on his lips, he taunted Sakujiro, his voice cutting through the din of battle. However, Watanabe wasn't a pushover. With lightning speed, he closed the distance between them, catching Sakujiro off guard. Sakujiro's eyes widened in shock as Watanabe deftly rotated his body, using the handle of his sword to jab at Sakujiro's wrist, forcing him to release his dagger. Exclamation mark. Still, Watanabe's onslaught didn't end there. With a swift rotation of his body, he delivered a powerful circular kick aimed at Sakujiro's head, the force behind it enough to send shockwaves through the air. Sakujiro's instincts kicked in, his muscles tightening as he desperately stepped back, narrowly avoiding the full force of the blow. The sheer power behind Watanabe's attack sent a shiver down his spine, but Sakujiro refused to yield, determination etched on his face as he braced himself for the next onslaught. Just as Sakujiro prepared to retaliate, a sudden gust of wind caught his senses. Reacting on instinct, he swiftly ducked under Watanabe's incoming sword swing, the blade narrowly missing his head by a hair's breadth. Boom! The force of Watanabe's strike reverberated through the air, and before Sakujiro could fully comprehend what had happened, a pained growl escaped his lips as he saw Watanabe's knees connected with his chest. Watanabe's attack had shattered his ice armor, leaving him vulnerable. With a jolt, Sakujiro was sent hurtling toward the ground, rolling uncontrollably before managing to regain his footing, albeit on unsteady knees. The impact had been brutal, but Sakujiro refused to yield, his determination unbroken despite the odds stacked against him. "Why? This won't be enough, Jiro." Watanabe's voice carried a hint of excitement as if he relished every moment of the battle. "Fucking psycho," Sakujiro muttered under his breath, his words laced with bitterness as he wiped away the trickle of blood staining his lips. Sakujiro couldn't help but acknowledge the vast difference in their combat prowess. While he had spent years isolating himself in misery, Watanabe had undoubtedly honed his skills to perfection. Sakujiro's body, weathered by age and neglect, struggled to keep pace with Watanabe's lightning-fast movements. Each strike from his opponent left him reacting on pure instinct. He was unable to match Watanabe's speed and precision. Rusty and out of practice, Sakujiro realized the harsh truth. He was no match for Watanabe in his current state. "I gotta keep going." With a determined grimace, he pushed himself up from his knees, his muscles protesting against the pain coursing through his body. Looking at his damaged armor, Sakujiro focused his concentration as he channeled his nen energy to repair the shattered defenses. Bit by bit, the fractured ice began to mend, gradually reforming into its former shape under his meticulous control. As the intense clash between Sakujiro and Watanabe unfolded, Sajin stood guard on the outskirts of the battlefield, his nerves fraying with each resounding strike. The ferocity of their battle threatened to draw unwanted attention, and Sajin's apprehension grew by the second. "Damn it, the boss is getting too carried away," he muttered under his breath, his anxiety palpable. The possibility of the city's elders intervening loomed over him like a dark cloud, and Sajin couldn't shake the fear of facing their wrath for the disturbance. But amidst his trepidation, a glimmer of resolve ignited within him. "Boss, we need to act swiftly." Sajin's voice cut through the tension, urgency lacing every word. Yet, before he could finish his plea, a surge of potent nen overwhelmed him, driving him to his knees as he coughed up blood, the pressure proving too much to bear. Now that I think about it, I guess you're right," Watanabe conceded, his excitement waning as he released his oppressive nen pressure on Sajin, who breathed a sigh of relief. However, Watanabe's next words sent a chill down Sajin's spine, "But if you ever dare to interrupt such an entertaining battle again!" Sajin's heart skipped a beat. "Understood," he replied, his voice tinged with apprehension. "All right." Watanabe shook his head, redirecting his focus to Sakujiro, who seemed ready for another round of combat. "It's unfortunate that I have to end this now, Jiro." Sakujiro's expression remained stoic, unmoved by Watanabe's words. "You think it'd be easy to kill me?" he retorted, his voice dripping with sarcasm. Hearing Watanabe's words, Sakujiro's instincts flared, urging him to flee. But before he could react, Watanabe's nen surged, overwhelming him with a sense of impending danger. "I've got to move." His body screamed at him to escape, but it was too late. Watanabe's voice cut through the air once more. "To be honest with you, you're really nothing at all." "Huh?" Confusion clouded Sakujiro's mind as he glanced to his left, only to see his arm fall to the ground, cleanly severed. He couldn't comprehend how it happened so swiftly and cleanly. "What?" Sakujiro couldn't understand what was happening as he turned to look at Watanabe, who closed his eyes with a smirk as he felt another chill down his spine. "Time to say goodbye, Jiro. I hope you see your family down in hell." Watanabe slowly spoke as the hand holding the handle of his sword was about to move. Suddenly, Watanabe frowned deeply as he suddenly leaped back. Bang! A thunderous explosion rocked the ground where he had stood moments before, leaving a smoldering aftermath. Watanabe couldn't help but slowly open his eyes as he saw a kitchen knife buried deeply in the earth at the precise spot he had occupied. A figure descended gracefully, landing beside the knife, and retrieved it calmly. "Now, could you tell me why you intervened, young man?" Watanabe's voice was stern, lacking any trace of emotion, but the anger beneath the surface was palpable. "I don't know, honestly," Raymond replied slowly, his gaze shifting between Watanabe's impassive face and Sakujiro's blood-stained eyes. He glanced down at the severed arm lying on the ground before meeting Watanabe's gaze once more. "But I can't let you kill him yet. Hey hunters. Short break. Because YouTube likes it when I transform content, so here's me. Transforming. Right now. Did you know that Morel's pipe doesn't channel Nen, it creates a medium? The smoke is still his own aura. The pipe just helps shape it. Okay, done. Let's dive back into the fanfic. Chapter 99 A while ago. Raymond's mind immediately sprung into action as he witnessed the unfolding spectacle. He assessed the situation with a quick, analytical glance and formulated a plan on the fly. His movements remained silent and stealthy as he navigated towards the battleground, his expression calm yet focused. As he drew nearer, he activated his eyes, and his crimson eyes glowed brightly. The world around him shifted subtly as details became clearer. Exclamation mark. As Sakujiro and Watanabe stood face to face, he saw a radiant, circular light enveloping Watanabe as the guy closed his eyes, forming an ethereal dome around him as Raymond suddenly felt alarmed. Watanabe drew his sword at a ridiculous speed, unleashing a surge of Nen energy that surged toward Sakujiro's unsuspecting arms. The sheer force of the attack and its speed were invisible to Sakujiro, leaving him vulnerable and defenseless. The second he realized, Sakujiro had lost his left arm. That old man is going to die at this rate. As Raymond observed the impending danger facing Sakujiro, memories of their first encounter flooded his mind. He remembered the suspicion and hostility Sakujiro had shown towards him, branding him as an outsider with dubious intentions. But despite their initial animosity, Raymond couldn't stand by and watch as Sakujiro faced certain death. He knew that if Sakujiro could perceive him as an outsider, Watanabe would also recognize that. "I have to intervene," Raymond resolved, his determination solidifying as he prepared to step in. In such an uncertain scenario, having someone who desired the downfall of your potential opponent could be considered an ally. Thus, Raymond took out his kitchen knife and shot it right through toward Watanabe's head. But his surprise was palpable as he watched the second his knife entered the radiant, circular field surrounding Watanabe. It was almost as if Watanabe had seen it coming despite his closed eyes. In a swift motion, Watanabe evaded the attack by leaping backward, narrowly dodging the knife's trajectory. I knew he would have reacted somehow, but how he saw through the attack was quite unexpected. Still, those unexpected reactions from Watanabe gave him hints about Watanabe's Hatsu, which was quite an advantage. Looking at Sakujiro's state, who had lost his left arm, Raymond asked, "You all right?" Sakujiro stood in silence, his gaze fixed on the unexpected guests, his expression unreadable. He pressed his right hand against his shoulder, stemming the flow of blood from the deep wound caused by the loss of his arm. Ice formed around the wound, closing it off and stopping its bleeding. "I guess you're all right," Raymond muttered softly as he glanced at Sakujiro's arm on the ground before he shifted his attention to Watanabe, who observed them with a wary gaze. So, he had to close his eyes to use that, He noticed that the invisible dome surrounding Watanabe began dissipating as Watanabe's eyes flickered open. On the opposite side of the battlefield, Watanabe's gaze locked onto the glowing crimson eyes that bore into his own, sending a shiver down his spine. It was as if those eyes could strip away his defenses and lay bare his deepest secrets. His attention was drawn to the aftermath of Raymond's attack, where a massive crater marred the ground in the direction of the kitchen knife. Watanabe's eyes narrowed as he turned back to face Raymond, his expression darkening with suspicion. You're an outsider, aren't you? His voice held a note of accusation, tinged with wariness. Ever since their first encounter at Dumpster Delights a few days ago, Watanabe had been wary of these outsiders. He couldn't shake the feeling that someone as formidable as Raymond wouldn't find themselves stranded in a forsaken place like Meteor City unless they had ulterior motives. Now, faced with the unexpected intervention, his suspicions only intensified. And the silence from Raymond only fueled his apprehension, causing him to heighten his alertness to its maximum. Damn it! How'd he get here? Sajan's frustration was palpable as he struggled to understand Raymond's sudden appearance. He gestured urgently to his subordinates, who cautiously moved closer to Watanabe. Meanwhile, Watanabe remained silent without stopping his men. His gaze fixed firmly on Raymond, his mind racing with suspicions and plans. Meanwhile, Raymond furrowed his brow, turning to Sakujiro. "What do you have? Anything sharp?" Sakujiro responded, materializing another dagger with his hatsu. Raymond shook his head, tossing his kitchen knife toward Sakujiro. "Take this. Your ice dagger won't cut it." "And you?" Sakujiro's ice dagger melted away as he retrieved the kitchen knife from the ground. "Me?" Raymond grinned before he took out a pair of chopsticks that he brought with him. "These will do the trick." Sakujiro fell into silence. "Listen, old man, when I signal, shut down your aura node," he instructed, deftly twirling the chopstick in his hand, his gaze focused. "Got it," Sakujiro responded after carefully observing Raymond's serious expression. "A chopstick? Aren't you underestimating me, young man?" Watanabe's disbelief was evident as he stared at Raymond's choice of weapon. Raymond remained unfazed, shaking his head with determination. "It's not just any chopstick. It's my chopstick." His voice carried a strange conviction, causing a momentary hush to settle over the battlefield. However, despite the incredulous looks from those around him, Raymond's muscles tensed in readiness. "Now!" he bellowed, signaling the start of their actions. "Arg! What?" A sudden cry of pain echoed from behind, catching Watanabe off guard. His eyes widened in surprise as he turned to see a pink-haired girl launching an attack on their flank. Reacting swiftly, Sajan shouted, "Shit! On your back!" Caught off guard by Maki's unexpected arrival, Sakujiro hesitated for a moment, glancing at Raymond with uncertainty. "I'll trust you on this." However, he quickly made up his mind, shaking his head and following Raymond's instructions to sever his aura node. In a swift and stealthy move, Raymond crept up behind Sakujiro, delivering a decisive chop to his neck. Sakujiro's eyes widened in shock as he staggered, muttering before losing consciousness, "What?" Recognizing what Raymond was trying to do, Watanabe quickly grasped the situation, shouting, "Focus on those bloody eyes. I'll see you try." Meanwhile, Raymond maintained his smirk, unfazed by Watanabe's warning. With a powerful kick to the ground, a thunderous boom reverberated through the air, sending a dense cloud of dust billowing towards them. "Fuck! Fuck! Fuck!" Watanabe's voice thundered with rage as he swung his sword in a wide arc, cleaving through the dense cloud of dust. The haze parted, revealing an empty space where Raymond and Sakujiro had vanished, leaving no trace behind, not even Sakujiro's severed arm that had lain on the ground moments ago. "You son of a bitch!" His furious cry echoed through the area, punctuating the tense silence that followed. Chapter 100-. "We're heading to the forest. I need to get my men before they return," Raymond declared, his voice firm as he scanned their surroundings. Maki nodded in understanding, her gaze briefly flickering to Sakujiro's severed arm, now held firmly in Raymond's grasp. With a swift movement, Raymond scooped up Sakujiro, cradling him securely. "All right," Maki agreed, falling into step beside Raymond. As they traversed the streets, their movements were almost too swift for the eye to follow. Maki's curiosity nagged at her, and she turned to Raymond, her expression serious. "Are you from the Courtois clan?" Raymond glanced at Maki before he looked forward once again. He shook his head. "I'm not. My eyes should be a part of my Hatsu." "Should be? You haven't completed your Hatsu yet." Maki looked at him slightly, relieved since he was not part of the Courtois clan. However, these words confused her as she couldn't understand what Raymond said. "Yeah," he responded as their figure made their way out to the forest. However, just as they were about to enter the forest, Sakujiro, who was being held in Raymond's arms, let out a pained groan as he slowly opened his eyes. Realizing he was being carried by Raymond, who had knocked him out moments ago, a heavy silence fell over them. Sakujiro glanced at Raymond's glowing crimson eyes, realizing they were outside the city. With a frown, he immediately channeled his nen, causing the temperature to drop suddenly. Without warning, his right arm shot toward Raymond's face, but Raymond seemed to have anticipated this as he dodged. He released Sakujiro before leaping back to create distance. Maki frowned, standing in between the two men who stared at each other in tense silence. "Why did you get me out of there?" Sakujiro slowly opened up his mouth, his voice tinged with coldness. "He who knows when he can fight and when he cannot will be victorious." Raymond responded with nonchalance, but Sakujiro's expression remained emotionless as he replied, "I'd rather die losing." "You're wrong." Raymond shook his head, disagreeing with Sakujiro's indifference towards his own life. He knew there was a deeper story behind Sakujiro's eyes which were devoid of emotions, but he knew it wasn't his place to pry. "You know nothing about me. You're just an outsider with questionable intentions." Sakujiro frowned as he observed his left arm, now in Raymond's possession, while materializing a dagger with his Hatsu. Maki observed the tense exchange in silence. She recognized Sakujiro's stubbornness and Raymond's determination, realizing she couldn't easily sway either of them. "What are you gonna do then? Continuing your fight? You can't even see his attack, you'll only get yourself killed," Raymond stated stoically. He was now on the same team whether they liked it or not, since Watanabe would come looking for him as well. He couldn't afford to have a skilled fighter like Sakujiro to die a meaningless death. "If I died trying, so be it. Those motherfuckers had to pay." Sakujiro's voice dripped with venomous determination. Hearing Sakujiro's resolute tone, Raymond frowned as he asked, "Look, which one would you like more? You dying? Or them?" Sakujiro fell silent, his grip on his dagger tightening until it cracked, his expression conflicted. "You want them dead, of course," Raymond continued, shaking his head. "Trust me, I can give you what you so desire." Sakujiro scoffed, mocking Raymond's proposition. "You? Your nen might be massive, but it's unstable when your eyes are activated. And you don't even have your Hatsu ready, don't you?" Raymond remained unfazed by Sakujiro's skepticism. He knew his capabilities were under scrutiny, but he also knew the truth. His nen property, Aura Annihilator, would activate the moment he activated his eyes. It was a terrifying and formidable ability, albeit difficult to control with his immense amount of nen. "It's up to you to believe me. However, she can reattach your arm. Even if you don't believe me, why not come with us and get your arm attached again?" Raymond suggested with his tone seemed earnest. Sakujiro turned to look at Maki, who appeared equally surprised by Raymond's words. "How did you know of that?" Maki's voice quivered, a sense of alarm creeping into her tone. Sakujiro contemplated Raymond's words. While he still burned with the desire for revenge against Watanabe, the prospect of regaining his arm was tantalizing. If he couldn't win with 2 arms, what chance did he have with only 1? "Seems like you've decided," Raymond remarked, brushing off Maki's question, which left her looking at him with a mix of surprise, shock, and wariness. "Let's go, this is your arm." He tossed Sakujiro's arm to him, and Sakujiro caught it effortlessly. Raymond's form blurred into motion as he headed toward the forest. Maki hesitated for a moment, still processing Raymond's unexpected knowledge of her Hatsu, before she followed closely behind. Sakujiro wasted no time trailing after them, his mind filled with questions and uncertainties. As they arrived in the forest, Raymond spread his perception as he then told Maki to reattach Sakujiro's arm as he went deeper to find Luke and the others. "Is he telling the truth?" Sakujiro questioned, his gaze fixed on Maki as Raymond departed. Maki let out a sigh before nodding solemnly. "Yes, he is. Give me your hand." Her expression turned serious as she focused her aura, creating a bright light between her hands as she channeled her nen. Pulling out her sewing needle, Maki swiftly began to sew up Sakujiro's severed arm with skillful precision. As Sakujiro observed the procedure, a hint of amazement flickered across his features. However, his focus soon shifted to something else. "You dare to steal that purse?" he questioned, his gaze fixed on the heart-shaped purse hanging from Maki's side, his expression clouded with disapproval. Before Maki could respond, the rustling of leaves drew their attention. Several figures emerged from the depths of the forest. "So, we're going to fight?" Luke's voice cut through the tension as Raymond, and he slowly approached Sakujiro and Maki. "I have yet to decide, but we now have an enemy," Raymond replied, his tone measured. That's a bit hard." "What happened?" Raymond inquired, his gaze shifting to Luke. Luke scratched his head awkwardly, his expression troubled. "I need to get some stuff if we truly have to fight." "How long will it take?" Raymond's brow furrowed at Luke's response. Luke briefly considered before answering, "Only about a day or two." "Do it in a day," Raymond commanded firmly. "All right, I'll go now, then," Luke agreed reluctantly, a heavy sigh escaping him. "Take them with you. I should be fine on my own," Raymond added, gesturing toward their men. Everyone nodded in understanding before they departed, leaving Raymond alone with Sakujiro and Maki to contemplate their next moves.